Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if RWBY reading Naruto the Huntsmen. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Javalalo and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Story starts now. Somewhere in the afterlife, Kushina and Minato were enjoying each other company, cuddling while trying to take a nap when suddenly an alarm startled them. Kushina grunted when she realized that it was the phone. "Don't answer and stay here with me, Minato." But Minato was too polite to ignore the phone, so he answered it. Kushina couldn't hear who was at the other side or what he was saying to Minato, but for the frown that Minato did, she knew that it was something serious. "Minato, hang up and tell her we have to go now, Naruto is in trouble." This made Kushina react immediately, and in a second both were out of bed and Minato used his Hiraishin to transport them. They arrived to a big auditorium where Hinata and her daughter Himawari were looking worried to the giant screen. "Hinata? What is going on? Is Naruto in trouble?" asked a worried Kushina while she was looking at the screen with a tied Naruto on it. This auditorium was where the current life of the reincarnate Naruto was shown in the afterlife, something that his family and friends have created soon after they discovered that Naruto's soul was never going to be reunited with them and he was going to be reborn every time the world was going to be in danger and need to be saved. At first all his family and friends have reunite here to watch him and remember the good times they had with him. Even the friends and family that he made in his new lives have joined through the years, making the auditorium expand to hold thousands of peoples. But after thousands of years and several Naruto's resurrections, most of them get bored and a little depressed of looking at their friends' lives and being denied the opportunity to be reunite with them. But despite this, they didn't give up hope that one day they would be reunited, so they made a guard system so that at least one person was looking at his current life so he could tell the others if something important happened. But by this point, many only would bother to come here if Naruto had found a way to finally pass away and return to them, or that he would have to fight Kagaya again. Despite this, Kushina and Minato have left clear instructions to be called whenever Naruto was in danger or was having an important event in his life, like getting married or having a child. They were his parents after all, and having missed this events the first time make them vow to never miss it again. It was Himawari who answered. 2 was kidnapped Bachan. He is now being held captive and being transported in an airplane. These caused that Kushina and Minato's anger explode, but before they could say something, the image in the screen showed that the kidnappers have thrown Naruto out of the plane without a parachute, letting him fall to his death. "Nuo!" all the women shout. Meanwhile, with Naruto in the land of the living. "Okay, falling out of the sky." A man with blonde hair and bright blue eyes thought as he looked at himself falling out of the sky itself as the ground got closer. "Check. The feeling of chakra going through my body." The boy thought as he tried to sense if he could feel any chakra going through his body, and while he could feel an energy, it wasn't chakra. That meant no chakra for some reason, so he didn't give that a check. "Wait, he has no chakra?" asked an alarmed Kushina. Hinata and Himawari didn't even bother to answer that, they were really worried looking at Naruto fall on the screen, so Minato was the one who answered. "Don't you remember that humans have lost the ability to use chakra thousands of years ago?" Kushina didn't say a thing and blushed in embarrassment for forgetting something that important. This was Naruto Uzumaki, and moments before this happened he was supposed to have been dying of having Kurama extracted from him. Strange, because he didn't exactly remember what happened after that point. Naruto looked down at the forest below him before he saw a group of people falling from the sky not far away. He felt pretty neutral towards everything actually, because he could tell for a fact that this was not his world. He has his memory back. "When did that happen?" asked a surprised Kushina. Hinata was the one who answered her. He didn't show any signs of having recovered his memories a moment ago, and no one else has reported this happened during their watch. But it appears that he didn't recover all his memory, just to the point when he died in the 4th Shinobi War, said Minato. "Are you saying that he won't remember me or my brother Jiji?" "Right now it seems that way, but it doesn't mean that he would not remember you later on, Himawari," answered Minato while nobody stopped looking at the screen. There wasn't any chakra in the air, and without chakra in the air or in his body, that meant he couldn't use his jutsus. Also, not very big of a deal when his body itself was trained to be way past civilian standards. Anyway, he still felt energy in him, just not chakra. That meant he still had a natural enhancer in him, so he could defend himself in this world. He trusted his friends to be able to defeat Madara and eventually find a way to bring him back. They were his friends after all, and the ground was starting to look a lot closer than it had before. He really can't remember anything beyond the 4th Shinobi War, and what is worse is that he thinks he is in another world and that we are going to bring him back," said Hinata, repressing her tears. "We trust you all, Hinata, and you should remember that Sakura and Sasuke are still trying to find a way to let his soul rest in peace with all of us. Remember her, Kushina." "I wonder." Naruto thought for a moment as he braced himself to land in the trees, and he channeled whatever energy inside him through his body, like he would have done with chakra. Naruto landed perfectly on the ground, and a small crater appeared where he landed. Naruto shivered as the shock of the landing went through his body, before he slowly stood back up and made sure that everything was in place. Did Toussaint just use that aura thing to enhance his body as he would do with chakra? And did he land without getting hurt? Asked Himawari, who couldn't believe what she had seen. Only in Uzumaki would have thought to do only that to survive that kind of fall. Said Minato, and he was immediately punched in the face by Kushina. Fuck, that hurt. Naruto shouted as he cursed and rubbed his knees in annoyance, and his cursing was stopped when he heard a noise behind him and saw a black bear-like creature with spikes made from bone coming from its back. It also seemed to have a bear mask made of bone, with red veins running along it. Naruto stared at the bear for a moment and it stared at him. Well, aren't you ugly? Naruto commented dryly to the curious bear before his sweat dropped when it started growling at him and got on its hind legs. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr. The bear growled lowly and Naruto raised his hands in surrender. Would it help if I said sorry? Naruto asked before he ducked under a paw strike from the bear and saw the tree that the bear did hit start to crack before falling down to the ground. I am going to take that as a no. Naruto said to himself with a smile, but he ended up cracking his knuckles in preparation for a good challenge anyway. The bear roared and charged at Naruto before Naruto made the bring it on motion with his hands. At this, Hinata giggled, finding funny the fact that Naruto treated Ursa as if he was a person. Naruto was about to hit the bear before he looked behind the bear and started to sweat before he turned tail and started to run away. The bear was not alone because right behind it were at least 40 identical bears. Oh fucking Sage. Where the hell am I? Naruto yelled in panic as he ran with a comical expression on his face and he winced with each step he took. Okay, so maybe he should have tried landing in a different position than what he had landed in. He also winced when he felt a pain where his seal should have been, and he also felt a pain coming out of his tailbone for some reason. His head also hurt a little, like something had pushed its way through his skull. So he is smart enough to run when being outnumbered fighting an unknown enemy in an unknown location, but I wonder when he is going to realize the source of those pains he is feeling. Wonder Minato. Hello? Naruto blinked when he heard the sound of a woman's voice not far away from where he was, and just when he was about to burst through a set of bushes to escape from the strange bear things, the bushes moved around and a girl with waved blonde hair and purple eyes stuck her head out. "RWBY, is that you?" she asked for a moment before she saw Naruto running towards her being chased by a large group of Ursa. She sweat dropped for a moment and in a deadpan response, she answered her own question. Nope. Naruto was so surprised that another person appeared that he forgot to change directions when running and ran right into her. The two of them were sent tumbling to the ground before she ended up looking at the sky on her back while Naruto kept tripping over his feet before he face planted into a tree. She was pretty sure he heard a gasp of surprise coming from the trees when he entered the small clearing before he shook his head and cleared the dust out of it. Naruto ran over to help the girl up, but he saw she was already standing and dusting herself off. She looked over to see him coming at her before she grinned. "Well, hello tall, blonde, and foxy. I'm Yang Xiaolong, have you seen a girl wearing a red hood around here?" The girl named Yang stated just as the Ursa burst through the bushes and glared at Naruto while ignoring Yang completely. She whistled in amazement at how he had already managed to piss off so many Ursa into chasing him around. "I don't like this girl, she is too flirtatious with Naruto and she just meet him," said Hinata. This made Kushina and Minato laugh while Himawari just facepalmed by her mother's comment. It was obvious that she was jealous. She has always have a jealousy problem with every girl that Naruto end up marrying or hooking up in his reincarnations, and while she understand that these was bound to happen and didn't want to negate Naruto a chance to be happy. Every time one of these girls died, she was the first one to greet them in the afterlife and make sure they realize that she is Naruto's #1 wife and what their place was. "I haven't seen a red girl, just you and these ugly bears, Uzumaki Naruto, by the way," Naruto said as he introduced himself with his last name first before he was tackled to the ground by an Ursa. Naruto placed his feet on the bear's chest before sending it flying into the air with an amount of strength that surprised even him. That was strength about equal to what he had when he used Sage Mode, and when he used that he was able to throw a creature the size of a small mountain around. "What did you do to make these guys angry?" Yang asked as she watched the bear fly through the sky before it came back down and broke its neck on impact. Now, being a 17-year-old girl, she had a good amount of appreciation for boys with good bodies, and the guy in front of her had a great one. His jacket and shirt were in tatters, so she was able to see just how muscled the tan teen was. "I might have called them ugly. Help please," Naruto stated as he punched a bear in the face and knocked its head right off its body. He gave a palm thrust to one going at his side and he sent off a burst of his new energy through. The whole creature expanded before it exploded and Yang nodded to herself at the impressive display. "Aw, you look like you have everything taken care of," Yang said in amusement before she jerked her arms forward and her 2 yellow bracelets turned into the metal boxing gloves with a hole on the front. Despite what she said, she was still going to help out. Leaving a guy that was clearly exhausted from something before this and letting him fight a group of Ursa was going to leave a stain on her conscience. She was about to start punching before she sweat dropped when she saw that the bears were still ignoring her in favor of going after Naruto. "This is the first time I have seen a Grim ignoring a person. I thought they were bent over destroying humanity, so how is this happening?" asked Himawari. "That is because your father could be really annoying when he wanted to be, you just never see it in person," answered Hinata. That and he was already nearly done with most of the group. She still jumped in and punched one of the bears in the face and her weapon fired an explosive bullets right into its head and sent it flying. These creatures were actually pretty durable, which made the fact Naruto was knocking their heads off even more impressive. "Why is my body so slow?" Naruto thought after a moment when he realized he was barely moving at Genin speed. It was like all his speed had been turned into pure power. Of course he was still moving way faster than a civilian, but compared to his usual Jonin speed, it was way slower than what he was keeping used to. It felt like he was a new Genin again with super strength. He felt something bump against his back and turned his head to see Yang standing back to back with him. "So he has super strength, I wonder what will Tsunade think about this?" thought Kushina. "You are a strange fighter, Foxy. Don't like weapons?" Yang asked with a smirk on her face as she unleashed a devastating 5-punch combo to another Ursa's chest before knocking it through the trees. "I like weapons, I just don't have any," Naruto said when he remembered that he didn't have any of his usual kunai or shuriken with him right now. He would have had them all taken care of by now if he had an actual weapon, but right now he was simply weaponless and the only person he had as backup was Yang. Naruto slapped his own forehead for forgetting something so important. Placing his hands in a plus sign he grinned when he activated his shadow clone jutsu, only to frown when nothing happened. He twitched when he remembered that he had no chakra. "You have always been more of a brawler, son, always preferring to use your fist and overpower jutsus than weapons," comment Minato. "But I always like when he uses sword, he has always have a talent for kinjutsu that he obviously inherit from me," said Kushina. "I bet I could get my sister to make you the perfect weapon for you later," Yang said as the number of Ursa dwindled down until there was only one of them left and Naruto's sweat dropped when the bear just looked at him for a second. Then it yelped before falling face first to the ground with some weird weapon sticking out of the back of its neck. "I could have taken it," Yang said after a moment when a girl wearing a large black ribbon on her head with long black hair and yellow eyes came from behind the bear. Naruto thought for a moment that she looked a lot like a cat before she turned her eyes to him and gave him an understanding look. She pulled her weapon out of the bear before catching it in her hand. "I didn't know that any Fronis was attending class this year. I'm Blake Belladonna," the black-haired girl said and one word she said stuck in Naruto's head. He is going to discover the source of the pain he was feeling before. I wonder how would Herrick, I bet is going to be hilarious, thought Minato. "Fronis? What the hell is that?" Naruto asked and his question threw both girls through a loop. How did this guy not know what he was or even what a Fronis was in the first place? The proof was right on his head and sticking from his tailbone for crying out loud. "You really don't know what a Fronis is, do you?" Blake asked when she realized he was being completely serious and Naruto nodded with a frustrated look. He still have no idea what was going on and not only was he attacked by a weird group of bears, but now he was being called a Fronis. "No, I have absolutely no clue what that is," Naruto said before he saw Yang holding a long orange-furred fox tail in her hands, one that looked just like Kurama's did. Naruto followed the path of the tail before he turned his head and saw that the tail was coming out of his own tailbone. He started to sweat as he moved his hands up to the sore spots on his head and when he touched 2 new objects sticking out of his skull, he realized that something had truly gone wrong when he had come here. "Calm down, Naruto, you can figure this out. So what if you have a long bushy fox tail and so what if Kurama's freaky orange rabbit ears are sticking out of your head?" Naruto thought in panic. What the hell is happening? Okay, maybe that wasn't handling the situation very well. "You know, for a moment I thought Tusan he was going to handle being a Fronis better," said Himawari. "That is because in your eyes he can't make a mistake, at least not big ones, but if he has only awakened part of his memory and his personality has become as it was in the beginning, then this is going to be fun to watch," answered Minato. "I'm more concerned with the fact that he has a fox tail and rabbit ears as Kurama did and they are orange too. What does this mean?" shouted Kushina. This make everyone stop to reflect on this. Finally it was Minato who spoke. "We better call someone to help us decipher this." He was walking to the phone when Kushina asked, "Who are you going to call?" "Jiraiya-sensei and Tsunade Sama to start." Minato, Kushina, Hinata and Himawari were watching Naruto walking behind Yang and Blake while they were waiting for Jiraiya and Tsunade. They had told them that they would be there in a moment. "Why are you following us?" Yang asked as she looked back at Naruto before she looked at his ears and tail again. Rabbit ears and a long fox tail, how the hell does that even happen? It made her brain fry just trying to figure out how a fox and rabbit would even think of getting together. Weren't they like natural enemies or something? Ha ha ha, why didn't I notice this? Oh, how much I wish I could tell Kurama this so I could see him get all fluster. Ha ha ha. Said Kushina while laughing. "I am not following you, okay, I am following you," Naruto corrected when he saw them both give him strange looks. "Why?" Blake asked the fox rabbit Franus because most Franus were rather suspicious around humans. "I may or may not know where I am and I might be following you too because I have no place I might be able to go," Naruto said as he looked away from them to hide his amusement when Yang gave him a dull look. It was obvious that she had no idea what he had just said before she seemed to perk up. When did he become so evasive? Not that he is making a god job, but why wouldn't Tucson be direct and blunt as always? Asked Himawari. That may be because he thinks that he comes from another world, so he doesn't want to tell anyone so they would not consider him to be crazy. Minato answered her. "Well, you are welcome to join our team," Yang said with a cheesy thumbs up while Blake gave a nod of approval to both the idea and how Yang was treating Naruto. Humans almost never treated Franus like people and more like the animals they looked like. Normally a person would be making a hunting joke about either the fox or rabbit parts of Naruto. "Thanks Yang, I won't let you down," Naruto said as he returned her thumbs up with one of his own. Naruto heard a ripping sound before his jacket fell to pieces around his body. He looked down at his now revealed chest and blinked a few times. Mama likes what she is seeing, Yang thought as she looked at the pure definition that was Naruto's upper body, while even Blake had to look away from the faunus that was now currently shirtless. Hinata blushed when she saw the image of Naruto, and while she agreed with Yang, she still didn't like that she was direct and act without shame, but that was mostly jealous because Yang act like she always wanted to act around Naruto. "Well dang, that was my last shirt," Naruto said before shrugging and acting like it didn't happen. He looked at Blake, the smart one of the group, and she tilted her head with a raised eyebrow. "So what are you two doing in the forest anyway?" Naruto asked, and Blake nodded her head once and looked up at the sun slightly. "We are doing an initiation ceremony and have to find artifacts that will decide what our teams are," Blake told him simply, and Naruto sniffed the air for a second when a weird smell drifted in his nose. He blinked for a second before he twitched his nose and breathed strangely. His face scrunched up and Yang started looking at him with a look that meant she was holding back a laugh. "Ah, at you." Naruto sneezed violently and Yang jumped out of the way when Naruto's tail swished and sent dozens of foot-long orange needles at her at near bullet speed. She looked shocked though when each needle went through the trees before impaling themselves in the ground. The needles were actually glowing orange too now that she looked at them. This was the scene that Jiraiya saw when they entered the auditorium, and it was Jiraiya who said what everyone was thinking and announced his arrival. Did he just shoot fur from his tail, as if they were chakra-coated senbons? The rest turned to see Jiraiya with Tsunade and their sensei Hiruzen Sarutobi coming along. They were going to welcome them when Yang's voice interrupted them. "That was awesome," Yang yelled as she ran up to Naruto and grabbed his tail and looked at it closely. She couldn't see a single fur missing from his tail, and it seemed like they grew back right after he fired them. "That was pretty neat," Blake said as Naruto looked at Yang with an annoyed glare for grabbing his new, and still sore, tail. Yang grinned and pointed the fluffy tip of his tail at another tree before she squeezed his tail and the hairs stood on end. Naruto yelped slightly from shock and orange needles shot out of his tail by the dozens and started shooting like a machine gun as they put little holes in the tree until the tree started to fall down. Yang grinned with stars in her eyes as she looked at Naruto. "I didn't know you could use foxtails like guns," the blonde-haired girl stated, and Blake palmed her forehead when Naruto jerked his tail from her hands. Naruto looked at her with fire in his eyes and she gulped and chuckled nervously. "That is an interesting ability this Naruto got," said Hiruzen. "Wait until you see him fighting, that is going to really pique your interest," said Kushina with a grin. But before he could ask her what did she mean, Minato interrupted them. "What did Naruto said?" "Start running," Naruto warned her, and Blake chuckled lightly when Yang looked lost. "Huh?" Yang asked, not having heard him talk properly the first time around. She didn't miss the glare though, and that spoke volumes about what he might have stated. "Start running now," Naruto said slowly, and Yang turned tail and started running comically with Naruto chasing her in a mock rage. Blake shrugged before she started chasing after them, hopping not to lose them. Sometimes she thought that she was the only mature person here. It made her wonder what kind of life these two have lived that turned them so carefree in life. Everyone was looking at this with a giant sweat drop at the back of their heads and thinking the same. "Naruto, you never change." The rabbit fox is chasing me. Yang yelled mockingly before she stopped just before she could fall off the side of a cliff. She waved her arms around trying to maintain her balance and stop herself from falling before she felt Naruto bump into her from behind and now they were both barely hanging off the side of the cliff. Oh crap. Naruto muttered when Blake burst from the bushes and knocked all three of them off the side of the small cliff. At this Jiraiya start laughing, ha ha ha, only the Gaki could end in a situation like this with two stunning babes. Go Naruto. And that comment grant him a punch of Tsunade who mumbles something about corrupting Naruto. I hate you too. Blake stated right before they started tumbling down the cliff and Naruto wrapped his tail around a falling root before bouncing and changing his position so that he was running down the cliff instead. Blake used her weapon and dug it into the side of the cliff before she started to run down safely as the extending wire on her weapon let her safely run. Yang activated her weapon before punching the air under her and creating an explosion that slowed the speed she was falling. She then punched the side of the cliff and she twirled and punched the air just before she hit the ground. She ended up landing nicely while Naruto and Blake landed moments after her without injury. Yelp, that was fun. Naruto said before Blake grabbed one of his rabbit ears softly and gave it a careful tug. Naruto flinched slightly before he saw her smiling lightly. It seems that Naruto had found someone to keep him in cheek. I like that girl. Said Tsunade. You are right, that girl seems to be the type to punch him or at least hassle for all the idiotic things that he will do without a doubt. Hey Blake, is this the place? Yang asked as they saw a small ruin with pedestals that each had chess pieces on them. Naruto looked at them strangely for a moment before he looked at the one that looked like some kind of weird pony. What are these things anyway? Naruto asked as he picked up the golden pony thing with his tail and tossed it up in the air a few times. He wanted to practice doing as much stuff with this new tail as possible and Yang looked at his fluffy and deadly tail in jealousy for a moment. It was like having another arm for him and Naruto was actually used to having extra hands from using Kurama's old chakra. This was actually a piece of cake for him to get used to. Before he knew it, Yang took the pony thing and showed it to Blake. The last thing that Naruto think made the recent arrivals to realize how similar were Naruto's frontis traits to the ones of Kurama. None of the three have seen this reincarnation of Naruto, so they have no idea that he had been reborn a frontis with an orange fox tail and rabbit ears. Is this why you call us Minato, because Naruto's new appearance? Shouldn't you have called us earlier instead of waiting until now? Or is there something else? There is something else. Said Minato and he then told them what had happened so far. Meanwhile Kushina, Hinata and Himawari were still watching the screen. How about the pony? Yang asked with a cheesy grin and Blake rolled her eyes before walking over in Naruto's direction. Sure, hey Naruto, I was wondering how you got here. Do you think you can tell us? Blake asked and Naruto shrugged. He himself had no clue how he got here, just that it was somebody else's fault. All I got is that I was falling from the sky and that I hit the ground on my feet. Naruto told her simply and she nodded to herself when her ears picked up no lying in his voice. He was being completely truthful, which would explain why he had no weapon, then again that tail of his was dangerous. That last comment got Hiruzen's attention who said so he has awakened part of his old memories but lost the ones of his reincarnation in the process. That is why we call Jiraiya-sensei and Tsunade-sama, but I must said that I did not expect you to come along Hokage-sama. Answer Minato. That was mere luck, I was visiting my students when they got your call and they mentioned they were going to see Naruto's reincarnation. I decided to tag along. They would continue to talk but were silenced by the females of the room that weren't taking their eyes off the screen. Do you mind if I touch your tail? Blake asked after a moment. There was something she wanted to test out but she knew how some frontis were about people touching their tails when they had them. She was surprised when Naruto moved his tail around so that it was in front of her because now he was just looking at another one of the chess pieces. Blake put her hands on his tail before gently running her hand over it. At least she has the sense not to yank on it. Naruto thought to himself. Holy, this thing is like pure muscle, but it is still so amazingly fluffy and soft. That, and it gives off such a nice warmth to it. Blake thought for a moment before letting go of the tail. This make the ladies in the room think the same thing. Kawaii. I want to touch it too. Hey, it looks like some other pieces are missing. Yang said and the others noticed that she was right. Other pieces were missing, which means that other people had already been here. Yeah, I can see what you mean. Blake said with a small frown on her face when she saw that both Black Knights had been taken. She wondered for a moment why they were placed like this and wondered if they had something to do with the team placements before they all looked up into the air when they heard a loud high-pitched scream of terror. Ah. Some girls in danger. Yang said as she prepared to go see what was going on before Naruto grabbed her arm when saw Blake's worried face. I don't think going to the sound of screaming is a good thing right now. That was a scream of fright, not one before dying, also that was a male scream. Naruto said in deadpan at the last part, and Yang looked at him with a surprised face. She was dead sure that had been a girl's scream and she was about to question him before she saw the twitching rabbit ears on his head. That last comment made Kushina and Jiraiya burst in laugh and it was Kushina who said, "A man that screams like a girl. That is hilarious. And if he was scared by something like a small spider or an insect is even funnier." To this Jiraiya comment, "If he screams like a girl when frightened then I wonder if he also screams like a girl in the bed." That of course was the wrong thing to said because now not only hit in the head by Tsunade but also kick in the gut by Kushina and even Hinata use a Junkin strike in his balls. Really? Well I'll be darned. Hey Blake, how much you wanna bet that the scream was from that flirty blonde boy John, I think his name was? Yang asked with a grin on her face and Blake just looked away from her. No bet. The black-haired girl responded with an even tone even though she was worried for John's safety. She was worried for everyone's safety because they were all comrades here. She was also pretty sure that the only person that would scream in terror was the blonde boy John, so she wouldn't be stupid enough to make a bet about it. Even I see that as a lousy bet and I love gambling, said Tsunade. But you know that Naruto luck at gambling is unbeatable. Was the only thing that could say Hiruzen. There are more people here? Naruto asked in confusion and Yang hung one of her arms over his shoulder and grinned at him. Well first there are me and Blake here. Yang started before being interrupted by Blake. Blake and I is the correct way to say that. Blake told her without looking at them. Right, anyway. Then there is my little sister Ruby. She wears this red hood and had a big foldable scythe that doubles as a sniper. Then there is that blonde boy with the lame pickup lines John. If you see a boy wearing green Chinese clothes with black and pink hair, that's Lyran. There is this arrogant girl with a rapier, she is wise and beware of her. She has some serious anger issues. Yang started and Naruto raised an eyebrow at some of the descriptions of these people while Yang just continued. Then there is this crazy orange-haired girl Nora. She has this cannon that turns into a hammer while still being a cannon. She never shuts up and might be on drugs. Yang explained and neither Naruto nor Blake could keep a comment out of their heads. You can't either. Naruto and Blake thought in unison. And everyone watching in the auditory agree with them. The last person I remember is Purr. She has this awesome spear that turns into a rifle and she wears red and gold armor to match her red hair. The girl has good fashion sense. You would like her, she has a feisty look to her. Nothing a stud like you can't handle. Yang teased as Naruto pushed her away before he wrapped his tail around her and hung her upside down in the air. How long do you think it would take for the blood to rush to her head and keep her quiet? Naruto asked dryly and Blake played along lightly. 15-30 minutes max. Blake said and Yang grinned when Naruto put her back on her feet. Yang was liking these two already. They knew how to play the game and win. Worthy teasing opponents. Blake and Naruto both looked up at the sky when they heard something falling down. What was that red thing getting closer? This is getting interesting and it looks like my son has make two good friends, said Kushina with a happy tone in her voice. Well the Gaki never have any problem to make friends, he even managed to befriend Nagato and Obito and they were trying to kill him. Told her Tsunade, to which everyone nodded, even Jiraiya who was still in the floor graving his balls in extreme pain. That red thing is really getting closer, but what is it? Asked Himawari and that make everyone to look at the screen once again. That red thing is really getting closer, but what is it? Asked Himawari and that make everyone to look at the screen once again expecting to find out what the red thing was. Hey, did you guys hear that? Yang asked Naruto and Blake as they looked up at the sky with blank or surprised looks on their faces. Yang looked at Blake and saw her pointing up with her hand while Naruto held his arms out to catch the falling girl who by the red hoodie would say is RWBY. Yang looked up before she blinked when she saw her little sister falling out of the sky while waving her arms around. The red-hooded girl shouted in panic before Naruto saw a blonde-haired boy crash right into her in midair and sends both of them flying into the branches of the nearest tree. Naruto blinked at how perfectly timed the two had collided before lowering his arms when he realized that he didn't have to catch RWBY. She had been knocked out of the air and into a tree by a blonde dude that he would assume was John. What had just happened? Asked an incredulous Tsunade, but no one answered her since no one knew what happened. Isn't John the guy that screams like a little girl? Asked Jiraiya. Did your sister just fall out of the sky? Blake asked when the trio looked up into the tree and saw a dazed RWBY shaking her head. John was hanging upside down and not much longer later RWBY seemed to right herself. Now that red thing incoming was Yang's sister, but from where did she fall from? Or is this a place where people drop their victims from plane? Asked Himawari. Minato was the one that answered her. No, Yang said they were doing some kind of initiation ceremony, as to where they come from I'm not sure. Ugh. What hit me? RWBY asked before she heard coughing and saw John looking at her sheepishly. Hey RWBY. John said in embarrassment. Today was not his day, and neither was yesterday or the day before that. Now that he thought about it, no day seemed to be his day. Naruto's tail stiffened and he turned his head to the forest to see an Ursa coming out of the woods. Naruto got into battle position before he saw a small pink explosion behind the bear. The bear fell forward and an orange-haired grill rolled off the top of the girl. "Oh, it's broken," she said with a pout before she jumped on top of the dead animal's head and started looking at it like it was a bunny. The trio raised their eyebrows in sync when a boy dressed in green Chinese clothes came from behind the bear panting. Kushina finally snapped and shout. "What the hell is happening? What is the problem with these peoples and their shenanigans?" Again no one answered since no one was sure what was happening. "Nora never do that again," said Leiran and Naruto couldn't help but comment. "She isn't there anymore," Naruto shouted and Leiran looked to see Nora wasn't on top of the Ursa anymore. Now she was looking at a golden rook piece before she grinned and started singing after grabbing the rook. "I'm queen of the circa STLE, I'm queen of the circa STLE," Nora started singing while she played with the rook piece, and honestly Naruto was left speechless for a moment when he saw how cheerful this girl was. She started running back to her partner when he yelled her name though, and Naruto couldn't help himself anymore. "I don't know what she is on, but I want some too," Naruto said with a grin before Yang punched him in the arm for saying that. He was still grinning though. "No son of mine's going to use any kind of drugs," shouted an angry Kushina while everyone think that they didn't want to be on the bad side of Kushina. He didn't mean it like that, he was just making a joke, besides the Gaki knows best to don't use drugs. Tried Jiraiya to reassure her, which quite didn't result since Kushina looked at him with furious eyes. "And how do you know that? You forget that I pass almost 3 years traveling with him while training him. And in all that time he neither drink alcohol or gamble or even refused to have sex with any girl I sent to him, so I'm sure that he is not going to use drugs in this or any other life," answered Jiraiya, who didn't realize what he had said until it was too late and Minato used his superior speed to grab him by the throat and look at him with eyes full of fury. "You took my son to a whorehouse. Without me." And that was the beginning of a legendary beatdown that Tsunade and Kushina give to Jiraiya and Minato. Did that girl just ride in on an Ursa? Blake asked herself out loud before a red-haired girl ran out of the forest and then trees fell behind her as a giant black scorpion covered in bone armor with a golden stinger burst through the trees after her. Naruto nodded his head as the red head jumped through the claws of the scorpion tried to gut her. She was skilled to be able to dodge that so narrowly without looking, and she had some endurance too, since she wasn't even breathing hard. "Those are some pretty good reflex she has, don't you think, Kasan?" said Kimawari. Hinata answered her, "Yes she has, it is almost as if that girl have a Byakugan. Well she could be a descendant of yours, with that white skin, buxom figure and long hair she resemble you too, and the red hair could be the Uzumaki genes in her, but we will search for that on a later date, now let's continue watching." Add Hiruzen. "Yang. RWBY." Yang yelled as she prepared to hug her sister, and before the two of them could hug Nora popped up between them. "Nora." The orange-haired girl yelled her own name and ended up stopping the sisters from hugging. "Naruto." Naruto yelled and Nora grinned at him for joining in on the fun. She didn't know that many people that would be willing to play along with her hyperactiveness. Hinata, Himawari and Hiruzen laugh at seeing Naruto acting as the old same Naruto that they once knew. "Did that girl just run here with a death stalker on her tail?" Blake asked, and before Yang could explode she saw Naruto pointing up at the sky as a shadow passed over them. "That is one big bird," Naruto commented, and everyone heard the sound of Weiss yelling something from the bird. "How could you leave me? She abandoned that girl," said Hiruzen, not liking the idea of someone abandoning their comrades. "I said jump," RWBY said with a shrug of her shoulder. "She is gonna fall," Blake commented dryly, and Naruto chuckled lightly. This was all so much fun just listening to these people talk, but he yelped when he felt Nora pulled on his tail. "She'll be fine," RWBY told Blake before Leiran commented in a deadpan tone. "She's falling." Hinata and Himawari gasped when they saw the girl with the white hair fall from the giant bird, but Hiruzen reassured them that as long as Naruto was there nobody was going to die. Meanwhile Tsunade and Kushina had stopped beating Jiraiya and Minato. Then Bucks that when John jumps out of the tree to catch her that he forgets about gravity. Naruto said as he saw John grin as he prepared to jump out of the tree to catch the white-wearing girl, and Ren looked at him strangely. "How can a person forget about gravity?" Ren asked before Naruto and the group heard a thump and saw John on the ground with Wai sitting on top of him looking at her fingernails. "That kid reminds me a little of Naruto, always rushing into things without thinking," said Tsunade. "Also the blonde hair and blue eyes help, I wonder if he may also be a descendant of Naruto," comment Kushina. "Like that," Naruto told him before Pura came crashing in front of them after she got knocked off the ground by the Deathstalker's claw. Seeing this Hiruzen comment, he really acts like Naruto. If he and that red hair girl are really as a descendants of Naruto, what are the odds of that happening? But then stranger things have already happened in his reincarnations, like the time he became the father of his next reincarnation. That comment leave everyone thinking of what could this mean and all hopping that the looks of John and Pura were only a coincidence and know something more. Great, the gang's all here now, we can die. Tojith Yang started before trees in the forest started falling down as a small group of Ursa came crashing through the forest. They all glared at Naruto personally and the Ursa and the group pointed at Naruto with one of its claws. Yang looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. What did you do this time? Yang asked before Naruto shrugged and helped Pura back to her feet. No clue, but if anyone wants to fight them I will kill Big Ugly over there. Naruto said as he pointed at the Deathstalker coming closer to them. He was in the mood for some good one-on-one and creepy over there was going to be a good test. You don't have a weapon or a shirt. RWBY said as she spoke the obvious in a deadpan tone before Naruto started running towards the Deathstalker at genin speed. He may have sage level punching power, but his speed was seriously cut without chakra for some reason. You get Foxy. Yang yelled encouragingly and Naruto turned his head to grin at her for a moment before looking back at the scorpion. Naruto jumped up in the air to get over one of the claw and twisting around he avoided a stinger. Still in mid-air Naruto put his feet on the bottom of the Deathstalker's extended tail before he used major leg strength and pushed off. Naruto landed in front of the creature before doing a backflip to dodge its tail. Gotcha! Naruto shouted in victory when he grabbed the oversized creature's tail and he started spinning his body around as he lifted the large creature off the ground. Naruto started spinning faster and faster until both he and the creature were both a blur of motion and then he picked a spot in the sky and launched the Deathstalker straight up into the sky until it collided with the giant black bird with a bone mask. Everyone that had seen were so impressed that had their mouths open and couldn't say a thing until Jiraiya finally speak. Holy shit, he is stronger than you Tsunade. Tsunade take that as an attack on her and respond, hey, I have also thrown things as big as that scorpion, like Manda and that sword that Gamabunta carries in his back. Naruto took a single step before falling straight to the ground out of dizziness. Did he just throw a Deathstalker into the sky and hit a giant bird? Blake asked with actual amazement in her voice at the freaking amazing feat. Ren whistled as he watched both giant creatures start falling to the ground some distance away from them, while Nora started jumping and clapping in amusement. Do it again. The happy girl shouted to Naruto. Fuck. I think that thing nicked me. Naruto thought with a wince as he felt his vision start to fade before he mentally forced his tired body to get up. Shaking his head, Naruto looked at his ribs and saw a shallow cut with something black mixed in with his blood. Naruto ran up to the ground and thankfully he seemed to have kept his super healing because the wound was already healed by the time he got back. He not only managed to keep his healing factor but increase it, but who is that possible without the Kurama? Asked an intrigued Tsunade to which no one could give her an answer. That was awesome rabbit dude rabbit fox person. John said awkwardly as the Ursa ran back into the forest when they saw they were once again outnumbered. Naruto stuck his tongue out at them before turning back to John and holding his hand out. Uzumaki Naruto, but you can call me Naruto. Naruto greeted with a smile before he was pat on the back roughly by Yang and her metal gauntlet things. He's a faunus. Weiss pointed out with a frown on her face, but she was the only one that seemed to even care about that fact. Oh common. Why does his reincarnations have to be mistreat or discriminate? Have Naruto not suffer enough? Reclaim and irritate Hinata. I understand how you feel Hinata, we all do, but you have to understand that the world is not a place where people don't abandon their hatred and prejudice so easily. Tell Hiruzen, to which she only nod. Pura stepped forward and looked at Naruto with a keen eye before she smiled at him and held her hand out. I'm Purus, nice to meet you. That was some impressive lifting you did. The red-haired girl complimented with a smile on her face and Naruto took her hand in his own with a grin. Honestly, I have thrown bigger things than that puny punk before. Naruto said truthfully when he remembered throwing Kurama onto his back inside the seal, or the times he tossed summoned creatures, or that time he threw the Satori when he had a hole in his stomach, or the time he lifted the Sage Toad statues for training. This thing may have been the size of a bus, but Naruto had still thrown way bigger. I remember those statues, man they were heavy. Said Jiraiya that had just recovered from the beating. Can you throw me into the air? Nora asked with a grin on her face as she invaded Naruto's bubble. Naruto looked at Yang with a pleading look to get this girl away from him and she just sent him a mocking grin. Go ahead, she won't stop unless you do it. Ren told Naruto after a few moments and with a shrug, Naruto placed his hand at Nora's waist and then he threw her straight up into the air. The group looked at her fly higher and higher and higher and again higher. Then when she was no longer visible to the human eye she started to come back down and John looked at Naruto with some fear. He did not want to get hit by one of Naruto's punches if he could throw a person that high. Whoops. Naruto stated in a questioning voice when he realized he may have thrown her too hard and he was about to panic about getting her into danger before she started to fall slower as her cannon hammer ejected a parachute from the tip and she came down safely. She was even standing on part of the hammer. Wow, I never thought that would have come in handy. Ren said out loud as his friend touched down on the ground gently and the parachute was sucked back up into the hammer cannon. That girl seems to be prepared for anything despite her hyperactive personality. I wish Naruto was a bit more like her when he was younger. Said Tsunade with a melancholic tone. Did that girl have a parachute in her weapon? Blake asked once more using a monotone voice and Naruto thought about it for a second before his brain hurt. He didn't want to think about weapons anymore, not until he figured out how to make his new energy work like chakra. You just love asking questions, don't you? Yang asked with a small grin on her face before everyone noticed the trees falling again to reveal what was now a miniature army of Ursa glaring at their group, with the Ursa and the lead glaring at Naruto. No, seriously, what did you do to make them so angry? RWBY asked before Weiss answered for him. He obviously said or did something stupid to that bear-like things, but what it was exactly what he did, Kushina? Asked Tsunade. He called the first one he saw ugly just before killing it in self-defense. As to why the rest of them are so angry at him, I don't know. Answered Kushina. Perhaps one of them saw Toussaint kill his kind, or maybe they have something like a collective mind. Theorize Himawari. Whatever it is that makes them so eager to attack Naruto doesn't matter, we all have seen him fight armies and be victorious. Said a proud Jiraiya and everyone else just nodded at it. He's a faunus, he was likely just being annoying. Y said with a bitter tone to her voice, while Blake looked at her in disapproval at how she was talking. I was being annoying, but being a fauna has nothing to do with it. I just called one of them ugly, and now this. Naruto said as he gestured towards the army of 30 or 40 Ursa, and John raised his hand. I know that he can be annoying, but this is ridiculous, I mean I just hit him whenever he was being too annoying. Exclaimed Tsunade. But you don't know how does things think, Haim, besides you also wanted to kill Naruto the first time he called you Bachan. Said Jiraiya with a smile, and the rest could help but giggle while Tsunade just blush. We have the treasures, so who is game for running away? John asked nervously before his answer was most of the group running towards the Ursa. He lowered his arm when it seemed like his question would go unanswered. The only person that stayed behind was Ren, and that was because stamina was not his strong point. That and it looked like the group didn't need him and the sound of dying Ursa were anything to go by. What is up with all the crazy people here? Ren muttered to himself as he looked at the massacre of the Ursa with a shudder. 1,000 years of death needle style. Did you just shove needles up an Ursa's butt? He used Kakashi's move. I can't wait to tell this to him. Said Hiruzen with a grin. Wahahaha. Slow down, RWBY. Kick some ass, RWBY. You got it, Yang. This has gotten out of hand. These people are all insane in their own ways. John thought as he saw multiple explosions and needles flying everywhere. Ren next to his side before he started shooting Ursa from afar with his guns. He could help out at least a little. When the battle finished, dead Ursa covered the field and the small group walked back with satisfied smiles on their faces. Killing creatures with no souls was really good for anger management. You know Tenten would have an orgasm seeing all those weapons and their abilities. Said Hinata and everyone agree with her. You are probably right, but you could only convince her to come here if you assure her that she is going to see a lot of these weapons in action, and that is something that right now doesn't seem possible. Answer Kushina, Tenten have spent almost all her time with Neji now, not that she could blame her, after all she spent almost all her time with Minato too. I got 8 and you got 6. RWBY pointed out to Weiss and said girl scoffed slightly, even though what the red-hooded girl said was true. So what do we all do now? Naruto asked the group and everyone stopped and thought about it. They guessed that now was the point that they would be heading back to the academy and for Naruto he hoped that he could find a new home at this school. It actually seemed like a pretty fun place if they got to fight monsters. This caused that Tsunade and Jiraiya burst out in laughs, unable to conceive the thought of Naruto willingly going to school, and when they said this to everyone else, they also start to laugh with the exception of Himawari that didn't knew how much Naruto hates school and everything related to study when he was younger. They are about to answer his question before the ground under Naruto exploded and a giant white snake with a bone mask shot out of the ground and swallowed him whole. The group was about to panic before the snake suddenly twitched before collapsing on the ground as needles shot out of its body. How many times has that happened to him already? Asked Hiruzen. In his original life or including the others? Asked Jiraiya, to which Hiruzen asked for both cases. I honestly stopped counting after the battle with Nagato, but I can say that almost all his reincarnations have been eaten by a giant creature at one time in their lives. You keep account of that? Asked an amused Hinata, to which Jiraiya just grinned while nodding. I hate snakes. The group watched as Naruto crawled back out of the snake's mouth with only a semi-disgusted look on his face. "Are you okay, Foxy?" Yang asked in amusement before Naruto spat some red goop out of his mouth. "In my life I have been eaten by 2 other snakes, some toads, a giant turtle, a giant monkey, and a giant chameleon. I am used to this. I just hate it more when I am eaten by a snake," Naruto said with a shiver as he remembered all the different times he had been eaten either on purpose or by accident. Why was it always him that got eaten by random? "I would say that it was some kind of vengeance that Orochimaru planned if I didn't know that that was impossible," said Jiraiya. "Speaking of Orochimaru, what is my student doing these days?" asked Hiruzen. "I don't know, sensei, I have stopped spying on him for a long time ago." After Naruto and his new friends end their fight with the Ursas, nothing important happened, which give them the opportunity to tell Tsunade, Jiraiya and Hiruzen what had happened and why they have called them. Hiruzen and Himawari have left going to search for someone more familiar with the world that Naruto lived now, as well as someone that knew more about the reincarnation process and if the Biju affected, leaving everyone else to watch it. Naruto. "I can't believe they just let me in the school that easily," Naruto thought as he remembered what he had to do to get accepted, which was just get his picture taken and have some basic information recorded for future reference. Right now they were all standing in the auditorium while everyone got their teams. Naruto was currently standing next to RWBY and Yang while he wore new clothes. They had been provided for him and they went with his general color scheme pretty well. Jiraiya was suspicious about that also and he made his concerns known. "I don't believe it is that simple to enroll someone in a school. It doesn't matter if you are the headmaster of it, he should have done more than ask for his name. He is planning something, but I can't see what it is." Everyone agree with Jiraiya, it was in their shinobi nature to be paranoid and the situation made them all worry. They just wish that Naruto could be a little bit more distrustful so he would also realize this and be more wary of the headmaster. Now he was dressed in an orange hoodie with short sleeves and under it he had on a long blue shirt on to match his old color scheme. His pants were pitch black jeans and his tail was waving behind him while he kept the rabbit ears hid under the hoodie. He was completely barefooted though, not liking these tennis shoe things people had on. While everyone was distracted by the ceremony, Naruto discreetly looked at his hand and channeled his new energy and in his open hand was a miniature orange version of his Rasengan. It was only the size of a golf ball, but it would still pack a punch if he hit anybody with it. "He can do the Rasengan with his new energy," exclaimed Jiraiya. Minato quickly answered, "Since the Rasengan is only chakra form manipulation, it is possible to do it with other energy form, although how strong this new Rasengan is yet to be seen." He was still trying to figure out how to do clones again, but progress was super slow. He couldn't even figure out how to get his energy to make the clone bodies. He wants to recreate the shadow clone. Is he insane? There hasn't been anyone capable of doing a solid clone in more than a millennia, said Jiraiya again, really surprised of what Naruto was trying. Well, he has always been a moron, he should know that chakra is the combination of physical and spiritual energies inside the body, that is why his clones can be solid, because they can transform the physical energy to become solid, and the energy that he has now doesn't seem to have the same makeup, said Tsunade. He quickly dispersed it before anyone could see it. He didn't need awkward questions right now, least of all from those that hadn't seen him throw a Deathstalker thousands of feet into the air and use it to kill a Nevermore that was flying at top speed. That was still a freaking epic shot by the way, which Yang had bragged about for him. John Arc, Lei Ren, Pura Nora Valkyrie. At the mention of his new friends' names, Naruto looked up at the stage to see the 4 of them standing in front of the head of the school. Above them was a big TV screen with their 4 faces on it and the letters J and PR under their pictures. You 4 retrieved the white rook pieces, so from this day forward, you will be known as Team Juniper. The man said as the people in the room started clapping for them before the man started talking again. You will be led by John Arc. The gray-haired man said, and the only person that smiled for John was Pura. Even John himself looked surprised and confused about why he was being put into a position of power. Wait, they leave the formation of teams to random, that is very irresponsible of the headmaster to do. If a team is unbalanced or can work together, it can end with everyone in the team dead. Reclaim an angry Minato since he didn't like the idea of teenagers losing their lives because they couldn't work well together. Dead and weak. RWBY whispered to Naruto jokingly and Yang chuckled to herself lightly. That's rude, he has Pura and the others 5 days before he gets himself injured. Naruto said after a moment when he saw Pura push John playfully and sent him to the ground on his ass. Naruto's sweat dropped before he corrected himself. Correction, now I say 1 days before self-injury. Naruto said and his joke even got Blake to laugh lightly. Although what Naruto said was rude, it is also truth, that boy seems really weak and incapable of fighting, unless he gets a rude whack up he isn't going to survive. Said Hinata, she knew very well that in the battlefield an inexperienced and doubtful person would only get killed. Oh come on, I am pretty sure the others will stop him from getting hurt 3 days. Yang said before their names started to get called. They all went up to the stage when their 5 pictures were on the screen and under their photos were the letters RWBY. Now due to an odd number of students this year the last team will have 5 members. Those members are Blake Belladonna, Ruby Rose, Wise Schnee, Uzumaki Naruto, and Yang Xiaolong. You have got the White Knight pieces, so from this day forward you will work together as Team RWBY led by Ruby Rose. Wait, why isn't Naruto leading the team? He has already proved his strength early, and I doubt those girls are anywhere near his level, even combining her strength. Reclaimed Kushina as if Osban could hear her. Minato get to her side and calm her, relax Kushina, he only show his strength and nothing more, you know that to be a leader, you have to show more skills than pure strength. This partially calmed Kushina, but she still wasn't convinced. Yeah you need more than strength to be a leader, but I still don't see why that girl RWBY was placed as the leader, I mean what did she do during the initiation to gain the right to lead our son? No one could answer her because no one knew what did RWBY did to show she could be a good leader, but they just assumed that the headmaster had a good reason to assign her as the leader. The headmaster of the school stated and Naruto gave her a pat on the back while Yang gave her a hug. Was Naruto upset about not being leader? Nope. He didn't really care about that because most of his life as a ninja he had only been a squad leader a few times. The only true time he led though was when he was fighting Obito and Madara. Well at least he isn't upset of not being the leader, but I agree with Kushina that he should be the team leader. Said Tsunade. Good job little red. Naruto said with a grin and Yang grinned like a loon next to him. With the ceremony done the small group met up with Team Juniper and they started looking for their room numbers. So are you guys happy with the teams? Naruto asked as he looked at the painting on the wall and he ignored the fact that Nora was sitting on his tail as he lifted her in the air as he walked. I might be a little confused. John said as they looked at the room numbers and saw that their rooms were right across from each other, but what confused him was that fact that there were only 2 doors. Don't you know that teams lives in the same room together? Y said in her naturally condescending tone and both Naruto and Ren stopped and looked at who they would be rooming with. At this Jiraiya start to cheer, way to go Naruto. Now make me proud and release your beastly urges with those 4 beautiful girls and make me proud. At this Tsunade Kushina and Hinata start to beat down Jiraiya, telling him that Naruto wasn't like, to stop trying to corrupt Naruto or to stop being a pervert, at which No only respond that he was a super pervert and get beat even more. Minato just saw with pity as his sensei was being beat down, but also grateful that he didn't join him in his cheers to Naruto. Darn it. Ren thought as he looked at Nora on top of Naruto's tail, giggling to herself. 1 guy 4 girls this is going to be utter chaos. Naruto thought with a shiver before RWBY unlocked the door to the room while John unlocked the room for his team. To this Minato nodded completely agreeing with his son. Here we are Team RWBY. RWBY yelled in excitement as the 5 walked into the completely plain room with an open window and 4 beds. It's cozy Yang said helpfully as RWBY jumped on one of the beds with a happy sigh on her face before Blake pointed out the obvious. There are 4 beds and 5 of us. Blake said and Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. This is the part where I offer up the chance for the bed and take the floor isn't it? Naruto asked and Yang looked at him with a taunting grin. He looked at the ground with a sigh and prepared for a cold night on the floor. Not that much different from usual actually since that was how he had been sleeping when he was training with Killer Bee. Hearing this Jiraiya gets super strength and immediately stand up throwing the girls down. No Naruto. Don't let yourself get forced to sleep on the floor. As my apprentice I demand you to share a bed with one of the girls, specifically that buxom blonde. This only infuriates even more the 3 ladies, especially Hinata, and they restart their beating towards Jiraiya, who could only drop to the floor in fetal position. Yep, and I thank you for your chivalry kind sir. Yang said with a mocking bow while using a mocking voice to speak with. It will do for now. Y said and Naruto looked at her in shock. This room alone was bigger than his entire apartment when he was in the Leaf Village, yet she acted like she was used to bigger than this. Yang was about to jump on her bed before she saw Naruto take one of her pillow and one of the blankets from her bed. You can share a bed with me, I don't mind. Blake told him neutrally before Naruto made a motion with his tail. His tail itself was long and fluffy enough so that it would be like 3 people or more on one bed because he had little doubt it would move at night. Once again Jiraiya managed to get free from the women and shouted, Nuo, why are you refusing to sleep with such a beautiful girl? You're not acting as my disciple should act surrounded by beautiful girls. And once again the betting start again, but even when they were more furious their punches were getting softer since they were starting to get tired. Somebody's got a crush. Yang teased, with RWBY already snoring away into dreamland after a stressful day. I do not have a crush, but making him sleep on the floor seemed to be a little wrong to me. Not to mention that having a team member that isn't a top condition would be bad for the team. Blake said, even though there was a small blush on her face at the accusation. Naruto was a handsome guy, and now that it was mentioned her mind had wandered for a second. The blush did vanish though when the logic of her words rang true. She acts so much as Kushina when she was younger, of course she has a crush on my son, she just hasn't realized it. Thought Minato. I'm not sleeping on the floor. Naruto said in a matter-of-fact voice, before he tossed the blanket into the air and swung his tail. Dozens of smaller and weaker needles shot out of his tail and pinned the blanket to the corner of the room. He swung his tail again quickly, and more needles attached it fully to the wall. Naruto jumped into his makeshift hammock, and his body sank into it so that only his long ears were visible anymore. That is awesome. Yang yelled as she woke up RWBY so quickly after the girl had fallen asleep. She saw Naruto shift around a lot, but the hammock stayed firmly in place without budging an inch. The sheets here were made of some really strong stuff, and Naruto's fur needles were pretty amazing. They even glowed a light orange that filled the room with a comforting, maybe even romantic. The orange glow was like a very soft candlelight. Yang's shout made the women stop hitting Jiraiya and look at the screen only to see Naruto on the hammock, and they could help to think how cute he looked. Jiraiya used this distraction to crawl away from the men hide so he could start to nurse his injuries. Maybe this furnace isn't that bad. Weiss thought as she went into the bathroom to get changed into her white nightgown, while Yang just changed into pajamas right in the room. Thanks for the reading light. Blake told Naruto as she got a book out and turned the pages of her book towards Naruto's hammock so that she would be able to use the orange light to read. Here. Naruto said from inside his hammock, and Blake raised her hand to catch a small number of glowing needles. They glowed slightly brighter than the ones Naruto had above his hammock, and she smiled before she stuck them above her bed so that she could lay down and read at the same time. If I didn't know that it is in Naruto's nature to help everyone he considers a friend, I would say he is trying to impress this girl. Teased Tsunade, but she didn't get any reaction from Kushina and Hinata since they were looking for the missing Jiraiya. They were still so mad at him that Hinata had forget to use her Byakugan. When Tsunade realized this, she also started to look for the pervert. And I get so Yang started before Naruto's tail hovered out of his hammock and pointed at her with an orange glow. Never mind, I'm just fine like this. Yang said, and Naruto's tail went back inside the hammock. Blake wanted some to help her read, but his tail was not going to be everyone's nightlight on request. Good night everyone. RWBY said as Weiss walked out of the bathroom before going to the bed she would claim as her own. Good night RWBY, Weiss, Blake, and Foxy. Yang said with a small smile on her face when Naruto got what she was trying to do and played along. What are they doing? Asked Minato, who had no idea what were they playing. Sweet dreams RWBY, Weiss, Black, and Yang. Naruto said, and Blake rolled her eyes when she realized what they were doing. I haven't heard her say this since Bolt and Himawari were little kids. Said Hinata recognized what they were saying and remembering the times when her children were little. Jiraiya was thankful for this since Hinata was really close to him and took advantage of the situation and get as far away as he could without getting caught by Tsunade or Kushina. See you in the morning RWBY, Weiss, Naruto, and Yang. Blake said even though she figured that Weiss wouldn't play alone with what they were doing, and she was right. Just go to bed already. Weiss said abruptly before she felt all four other teammates staring at her with expectant eyes. Eventually her will broke and she buried herself under the covers. Fine. Don't let the bed bugs bite RWBY, Black, Yang, and Uzumaki. Now go to bed. Weiss said in annoyance, and everyone grinned at having gotten to her. That outburst from Weiss made the three ladies look at the screen while wondering what was her problem. Jiraiya used this distraction to get as close as he could to the door, but he didn't get the chance to get out since the distraction didn't last long enough. Normal knees. RWBY thought happily as listened to her friend start to fall asleep before drifting off to sleep herself. Ah. Everyone's eyes widened when they heard John scream like a girl from across the hall before Naruto's voice was heard next. Not even one day. Also I told you that girly scream in the forest was a boy. Naruto said in an I told you so kind of voice. Weiss just placed her pillow over her head to drown out the sound of idiots. The first night was not off to a great start. Jiraiya decided to take a chance and go for a run to the exit of the auditorium, but when he was about to open the door, he was greeted by Shikamaru, Temari and Gaara. Hello Jiraiya-sama, are you leaving already? Asked Gaara casually without realizing what he had done. Immediately Tsunade, Kushina and Hinata run to Jiraiya and start beating him again. To this Temari just nod in approval, knowing that whatever the pervert age has done he deserve it, and Shikamaru just say under his breath how troublesome this was. Temari, Shikamaru and Gaara had come last night and have come guided by Hiruzen. After Jiraiya's beating was over and the women have calm, they explain the new arrivals what had happened and why they call for their help. Shikamaru had spent during his time in the afterlife almost a century of time researching anything there was about the reincarnation, so he has become one of the few experts on the subject. The Mari have come because she had assisted Shikamaru during some time and she didn't want to let her husband drag into some worthless search again, besides she was bored. And finally Gaara had come because of mere luck. It turns out that him and Kankuro were visiting her sister when Hiruzen asked for their help and he decided to tag along. It was also a plus that as an ex-Jinchuriki, he had more knowledge about the Bijus than almost anyone. Himawari had gone to look for her brother Bolt, but he declined to go since it was already late. Then she go to invite the one expert on the current world in Fronis that she knew, but she told her that she already have plans for the next few days, but she would go to see her and everyone as soon as she was done with her commitments. Everyone in the auditorium agree that it was already late and that nothing else was going to happen, so they all go to their homes, but Hinata and Gaara stay in case something important happen, but nothing happened, and the next morning everyone have returned to see their favorite blonde. The next morning with Naruto. What the hell is poking me? Naruto thought as he was awoken from his sound sleep by the feeling of something poking him in the back. He ignored the feeling as he enjoyed the warmth of his tail coiled on top of his chest. He was starting to drift off to sleep again before he felt something knock him up into the air and out of his hammock. Naruto landed on his feet expertly and when he looked to see the culprits he saw Blake, RWBY and Yang, each holding up paper cards. 10-9.5. Where are they scoring him? For what? And base on what? Asked Tsunade. To which Jiraiya answered with a grin, I don't know, but the Gaki sure has the meeting from his palm. Nice form if you weren't a bunny I would say you were a cat. Yang teased and Naruto's rabbit ears twitched in annoyance. His ears, as much as he didn't like it, were in fact bunny ears. His small DNA test the day before showed that Naruto was indeed a cross between a rabbit and a fox. That in itself was funny, since his dad was fast on his feet with good reaction time like a bunny, while his mother was the Kurama Jinchuriki before he was. His father had yellow hair, while his mother had red, making his orange ears and tail. The fact this all matched up with Kurama's old features was just annoying. This depressed Minato babbling about being compared to a bunny was not manly, while Kushina was laughing aloud because of the comparison and how it had affected Minato. Everyone was looking at the couple's interaction with amazement until Gaara spoke, so that is why you ask for my help, because Naruto's extra features resemble those of Kurama. That is correct Gaara-sama, since you were a Jinchuriki, actually speak with Kurama and have a great knowledge of the Biju we imagine that you could tell us what does this means, or if we have to start to worry. Said Tsunade to which Gaara nodded but continued to look at the screen. Totally a cat. RWBY said, while Blake twitched at the constant mentioning of cats. Looking at them with an annoyed face they shifted a little on their feet. Why did I have to wake me up? Naruto asked, before RWBY grinned and pointed to the sleeping Weiss in her bed. Naruto raised an eye before he saw her pointing at a whistle around her neck. Naruto grinned for a moment before he went into the bathroom and filled up a cup full of cold water. Yang and RWBY grinned for a moment when they saw he was going along with freaking out Weiss first thing in the morning. Splash. RWBY almost yelped when Naruto tossed the water in her with a deadpan expression on his face, while Blake smiled lightly when Naruto winked at her. That's my son, always a gentleman incapable of disturbing a lady's sleep and protecting her. Shouted proud Kushina. But Kushina-san he prank all Konoha when he was a kid and that include men, women, kids, old folks and even pets. Said Hinata, to which Kushina immediately get depressed just as Minato. Why did you do that? RWBY asked with a pout on her face, while Naruto crossed his arms and mildly noticed that they were already dressed in the school uniform. They each had made their own personal touches though. RWBY had her hood, while Yang and Blake had their scarf and bow respectively. Let the girl sleep. She seems to be having a good dream right now. Naruto stated dryly as he looked at Why sleeping. RWBY pouted before she remembered what she was going to have them do today. Naruto-kun should have splashed the white-haired girl, said Hinata, surprising everyone in there with that comment, to which she said, she deserves it after discriminating Naruto for being a faunus. Tsunade was the first to recover and told Hinata, but Hinata, you know that Naruto would never be mad about stuff like that, in fact he would accept all the hatred that girl has toward faunus and would turn it into acceptance. This make Hinata also depress and move alongside with Kushina and Minato, saying that she have soiled Naruto's memory and that she didn't deserve to be his wife. Hey Naruto, we are all unpacking today. Don't you have anything you need to unpack? RWBY asked after a moment and Naruto shook his head. Right now the only thing Naruto kind of owned were the clothes he was wearing, but that didn't really bother him. His real problem was the fact he was back in school, otherwise known as hell for teens. RWBY's face fell at that fact before she grinned when she got an idea. I don't need a weapon. Naruto said before she could get the chance to say what she wanted. Why did he even need one? Short range he was powerful enough to beat the shit out of nearly anything that got within arm's distance of him, while he could take care of long range with his piercing needles. For explosive power he had the Rasengan, and if that didn't work then there was little a weapon could do that his own power couldn't. And he was not very good at using any but the most basic weapons. He has never really had a need for them before and he doesn't really need one now. You should have teach him how to use a weapon when you train him, Jiraiya. Or what was more important than training Naruto, and don't say anything pervert or I'm going to give you a beating even worse than yesterday. Reclaimed Tsunade to the sage and Jiraiya got depressed like the others. You might not need it now, but who knows when one could come in handy. I say just let her make you something, otherwise she will bug you about it until you do let her. Yang said with a smug look on her face, while Naruto palmed his face when he saw the look on Ruby's face. She was pouting in the way that all 15-year-old girls knew how to, and he got the feeling that she and the others had already made him a weapon when he had spent the whole weekend sleeping to recover from the damage that was left over from the war. And he had wanted to mourn the loss of his friends alone, because without Kurama, he felt surprisingly empty now. She already made me a weapon, didn't she? Naruto asked, before Ruby started to literally shake with excitement. Naruto sighed, before he smiled at her. Okay then, hit me with what you got. Naruto told her, before Ruby ran over to her bed and reached under it before pulling out a long orange pool about 7 or so feet long. She also seemed to be having trouble carrying it before Naruto found out why when she handed it to him. The thing must weigh at least a few hundred pounds, even though it looked light. I never picture Naruto as someone that use a weapon other than kunais and shurikens, but I imagine that they would give him something else than just a heavy staff, considering that their weapons transform and can fire bullets made of dust. Said Temari. I doubt that is just a staff, she is probably going to explain to Naruto all what it can do. Said Shikamaru that had kept quiet the whole time until now. It has a medium range mode and is made of really heavy metal. I figured with that freaky strength of yours, you would crush any other weapon you got your hands on. Ruby said as she reached out and twitched part of the staff for him and the staff separated into 7 sections connected by black chains. Naruto twitched the same spot and all the chains lined back together to turn it back into a single staff again. Naruto looked at it before he noticed the small blades at the ends of the pole to add balance to it. All in all at first glance it would look like any ordinary double-ended spear. This is pretty cool. Naruto thought after a moment before Ruby grinned and twitched the middle link to the whole thing. Naruto watched in amazement as the blades at the ends of the staff folded in on themselves and went inside the staff before the middle section of the staff expanded from 1 inch in diameter to 1.5 inches diameter. After that the other sections of the staff started to shrink before shooting into the middle segment. When it was finished the weapon was now just a small but heavy foot-long pole. Wow, that is an impressive weapon. Exclaimed Temari. You know if Tenten have had a weapon like that during the Chunin exams, you would have had a harder time defeating her, not to mention that these girls' weapons are something that even you would have problems dealing with even now. Talk again. Shikamaru that didn't see his wife getting depressed like the others and whispering about how unfair weapons are these days. I made it so that it would be easy to carry, just squeeze the middle hard and it will expand to its full length. Then twist the middle and the blades will come out of the ends and then twist the 2 sections on either side of the middle and it will separate into multiple sections connected by a chain. Ruby explained with stars in her eyes as she looked at one of her best creations right next to her own weapon of course. Sniper scythe for the win. Thanks Ruby, I really appreciate this. Naruto said as he swung the small version of the weapon like a blundering tool. Yep, that would fit his style just fine. It was like beating the hell out of everything with a small pipe that was colored orange, but this pipe turned into a kick-ass spear. With a sigh Naruto put it into the front pocket of his hoodie, the one in front of his stomach, and he then rubbed her hair affectionately. You should get dressed in uniform, we have classes today. Blake advised when she saw that Naruto was still wearing what he had been sleeping in the last few days. Not that she could blame him, because she had been secretly avoiding Ruby and Yang by reading in here while they explored the campus. She had been able to hear just how pained he was when he was sleeping and not hiding it. She was pretty sure he hadn't even noticed she had been in the room, but he sounded hurt both emotionally and physically. He really doesn't remember us. Stated Gaara with a monotonous but sad voice. This is really troublesome situation. Normally a Naruto reincarnation awakes his past life memories only when he reaches certain power level, equivalent to when he used the Kyuubi cloak or that of Sage mode, but while he has raw strength equivalent to Sage mode, he still lacks in speed and aura, that is the equivalent to chakra in this world. So why his memory awaken, even if it is only a part? And what does this means? Ask out loud Shikamaru that was already dreading all the work he was going to have to do in order to answer this. Himawari look at him with a puzzled look and ask him, didn't Jiraiya-sama tell you we need your help to discover that? Since you are the expert in my father's reincarnations I thought that will be obvious. She saw Shikamaru droop his head and was already expecting him to be depressed as the rest, but he only collapsed in one of the seats and said that the troublesome blondes still give him so much work even after all this time and that he won't be able to relax in the future because this will consume all his time. Screw that, Uzumaki Naruto doesn't do school uniforms. They are so lame they look good on you girls though. Naruto said quickly before he dug himself into a grave. In truth he just couldn't stand the thought of wearing the same thing as everyone else. He didn't like the thought of being like everyone else. That and he had learned that his hoodie had 2 holes on top so that his ears would go through it. That way the ears would look like they were part of the hoodie. She looks like she is waking up. RWBY started as Y sat up and yawned for a second before RWBY blew the whistle right in Weiss's ear anyway. From the floor Weiss looked up at RWBY like she was stupid. "Good morning Team RWBY." RWBY yelled out happily and Weiss looked at her bitterly. "What is the world is wrong with you?" Weiss asked in annoyance, while RWBY just looked happy. "Well now that you are awake we can start our first order of business." RWBY said happily and Weiss looked at her like she was insane before she took up and dusted herself off. Naruto himself saw that at some point Yang had gotten a lot of random junk in her arms. "What sort of business?" Weiss asked as she forced herself to calm down while Naruto figured out where this was going. "Decorating of course," Yang said with a smile while Naruto face palmed. They had told him that they would have classes today and yet they were going to make themselves late on the first day. Now that was pretty funny in his opinion. Imawari couldn't believe it, they were planning to decorate now. Haven't the girls realized that they were going to be late for classes? The proper Hyuga insider was screaming that that was improper and it was not polite to be late for anything, but the Uzumaki insider was expecting to see their reaction when they realized they were late for classes. She couldn't decide which side of her chose and this was reflected on her face, but only Gaara noted it and he didn't say anything. "We still have to unpack too," Blake said as she held up her suitcase before it opened on its own and spilled its contents onto the floor. "And clean," Blake said when she looked at her stuff. Weiss on the other hand did not look as amused as the others did, while Naruto just raised an eyebrow at RWBY when she blew the whistle again right in Weiss's face and surprised her into falling on the ground again. "Oh yeah. Weiss, Yang, Naruto, Blake, and their fearless leader RWBY have begun their first mission," RWBY said with a toothy smirk before she pumped her fist into the air. "Banzai." Naruto, Yang, and Blake all joined by RWBY's side and pumped their fists into the air as well. "Banzai." The 3 yelled right after her. They all wrapped arms around each other's waists before they all tilted to the right slightly. Naruto was surprised that Blake had joined in on the fun, since normally she was more of the sarcastic and loner type. Then again she seemed to be bonding well with the rest of the team. "That girl acts a lot like I used to be, but she seems to be more open and doesn't want to kill everyone, still she has some secret that she doesn't want anyone to know," thought Gaara. "Idiots, I am surrounded by idiots," Weiss thought before she went to the bathroom to change her clothes again. While she was in the bathroom the group had already started working on getting things up when she did come back out. Yang was putting up the poster of a boy band group on the wall before moving to putting some books on the shelves. Weiss sighed before she joined in and put a graceful painting on another wall. Blake was taking her books out of their boxes and putting them away before he saw her blush slightly when she picked up a black book with red writing on it. She looked shocked for a moment before she tried to put it back. "Ninjas of Love?" Naruto asked her quietly so the others didn't hear and she looked at him with wide eyes. Naruto looked at the rating on the book and saw the letter M with the number 21 next to it. She looked at him in shock as she tried to form words, but Naruto just took the book from her and placed it in the shelf backwards. She looked at her and put his finger to his lips. She nodded gratefully and they both looked at the window when they heard a riping sound. This immediately took Jiraiya out of his depression and he started to said, "That book could never compare to my Icha Icha. Naruto, as my apprentice I command you to bring back the Icha Icha to this world." This took out the rest of the depressed people and while Tsunade, Kushina, Hinata and Tamari start to beat Jiraiya again while Minato was crying of happiness at the thought of his son, continue the Icha Icha series. RWBY had apparently tried to hand the curtains with her weapon and ended up ripping them. Naruto sighed and walked over there before pinching one of the furs on his tail and he pulled on it slowly as a long orange string with a sharp point came out. Grabbing the ends Naruto started to use his fur to sew the curtain back together before he cut the fur and smiled at his handiwork. When they were all done they stood in front of the door and looked at their handiwork. The room itself looked good except for one fact. They had piled all the beds in the middle of the room. He was glad his hammock was in the corner because right now he was the only one that had a place to sleep. Hammock for the win. That is product of Jiraiya's teachings, said a proud Minato. One of the lessons that Jiraiya have drill in his training was to always carry an hammock since you never knew when you could need it and he was sure that Jiraiya have teach this to Naruto also. This won't work, Weiss pointed out as she looked at the mess while Blake looked at Naruto's hammock in jealousy for a moment. It was like he had known that the beds would become a bigger problem. Then she looked at the beds again. "This is going to be cramped, can you?" Blake trailed off as she looked at Naruto and he shook his head no in amusement. You shouldn't negate your teammates the experience of the hammock, my son. Exclaimed Minato, and once again Jiraiya gets some hidden strength to free himself from the beating Nad comment, something, most likely perverted, but at this point Tsunade was expecting something like this and she managed to beat him before he could say anything. We might have to ditch some of our stuff. Yang pointed out before RWBY looked like she had an idea forming. Naruto leaned against the wall as he waited to hear what she had to say. We could just ditch the beds and replace them with bunk beds. She shouted as she threw her arms up in the air. Not a bad idea, but unless they can acquire them before tonight they still have a problem, unless they don't mind sleeping all in the floor. Comment Gaara. Naruto face palmed, questioning his leader's sanity right at that moment before Weiss put her 2 cents in. I am not sure that is a good idea. She stated before Naruto chipped in when he saw the faces of everyone in the room. Don't worry, I can build it and made it safe. Naruto told her as he lifted one of the beds into the air before he placed it back on the ground. Weiss and the others watched as he lifted another bed before he carefully placed the wooden parts on top of each other. Still not very safe. Weiss commented dryly before everyone saw when Naruto wrapped his tail around where the wood was touching. They all heard the sound of something piercing the wood multiple times before Naruto took his tail off to show that his tail needles were acting as nails to keep the beds in place. Naruto did it 3 more times on these 2 beds until the first bunk bed was finished. Naruto jumped up and landed on the top bunk and nothing bad happened. He looked at the girls with a nod before he got started on building the next one. Doing the same thing as before, Naruto finished rather quickly now that he knew that it would work. Hey Blake, you want me to put some glowing needles into the bottom of the top bunk so that you have some light to read with? Naruto asked, and she nodded gratefully. Naruto ejected a few dozen more of his orange glowing needles before he got on her bed and started to carefully attack them to the bottom of the bed above hers. Could you do mine too? Weiss asked, so with a sigh Naruto walked over to hers and added a few dimly glowing needles as well. As it turned out he could control how brightly his needles glowed, so with a mental command, he stopped the needles from glowing before standing up and looking at his handiwork. Yang nudges him in the side. Good looking, strong, funny, and good around the house. You sure got it going on, don't you, Foxy? Yang said with a teasing wink while Naruto rolled his eyes at her teasing. He was still feeling the male pride kick in as he looked at the newly built bunk beds. That's right, my son has the whole package and any girl would want to be his girlfriend. Shout a proud Kushina and Minato. Hey Naruto, can you add a curtain around mine? RWBY asked and Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow for a moment before shrugging. Sure, but it will have to wait till later. Naruto told her and she pouted at him. Naruto ignored it though in favor of reminding everyone what he had learned. He looked RWBY dead in the eye and grinned. Guess what? What? RWBY asked and Naruto pointed to the clock on the wall that said 9:07. Class started 7 minutes ago. Naruto said and everyone in the froze at his words. Oh yes, letting Weiss wake up on her own was the biggest reason they were late to class now. They all looked between him and the clock before they started running out of the room in an effort to not be too much later than they already were. Naruto just walked behind him as he watched them get some impressive distance covered. Where are they headed to in a hurry? John asked as he and his team walked out of their room next and Naruto raised an eyebrow at them. Is he serious? Hasn't he or his team realized that they are also late? He is the worst team leader ever. Exclaimed an irritated Himawari that had gone completely Hyuga by now. You do know that you all are late for class, right? Naruto asked and they froze next when they realized that they were late. They could blame that one on not having a clock for their room yet but soon they started running for the classrooms as well. Naruto chuckled before he felt Nora jump onto his tail and looked up at him expectantly. Whis? She asked in her cutest voice, so with a sigh Naruto started to walk with her on top of his tail, grinning like an idiot as he lifted his tail up so that she was nearly floating above the ground. Naruto had a problem saying no to cute girls. By this time Jiraiya was lying in the floor completely beaten. The women have threatened him to stop saying perverted things or the beatings will get worse, but they knew deep inside them that this was something impossible and that Jiraiya would always be a huge pervert. They also were glad with that because they secretly liked to punch him since they didn't even spar anymore. And while all this happened Minato and Gaara were looking at Shikamaru that had fallen asleep and was now snoring quietly, but they didn't wake him up since this would be probably the last time he would get to nap in a long time once he start to analyze this Naruto reincarnation. The rest of the day was really boring. The classes that Naruto had were more theory than practice. The only highlight of the day was when Weiss tried to show off her skills, only to be humiliated when she get distracted and was about to be run over by a Grim, only to be saved when Naruto killed it with a hail of his needles. It was until the end of the day that things get more interesting when Naruto and his team along with Team Juniper were called by Professor Ozpin. I believe you all know why you are here. Ozpin, the headmaster of the school, stated as he looked at Team Juniper and Team RWBY. The only two teams that had been late for their first days of school. Currently they were all standing at the bottom of a canyon and only Ruby and John had their weapons on them. Nearby there was a helicopter that Osman had used to bring them here. Because we are more awesome than the other teams? Naruto asked, and Yang standing next to him gave him a quick fist bump without having to look at each other. Osman looked at the all for a second before he took a sip of his coffee mug. Agaki still has no respect for the authority. Said Tsunade, still a little bit sour because Naruto almost never show her any respect when she was Hokage, but deep inside her she was glad that he hadn't changed at all. Not the reason I brought you here. No, as punishment for being late to class on the first day I have decided that a teamwork training exercise is needed to motivate you all into learning to show up on time. Osman said as he paused for a moment as he let that information sink in, and seeing as he had nobody commenting on his words he decided to continue. Anyway, on top of them cliff is a single blue relic. The team that first climbs up to the top of the cliff and grabs the relic will not be getting detention. Osman said neutrally. That doesn't seem as a difficult exercise. Comment Himawari but was immediately corrected by her mother. You have to remember that they cannot stick their feet to the side of the canyon and climb it like you would do with chakra, so they would have to climb the canyon the old way. I also believe that he hasn't finished explaining the exercise to them, he probably is going to add some crazy rules to make it harder on them. Added Minato and everyone nod. Sorry John, but it looks like you are getting detention. Yang said out loud before a cough from Osman reminded her that he was still there. She felt Naruto nudge her side with a grin and she huffed slightly at him mocking her for getting in trouble. John was pouting when he realized that they would likely be getting the detention. The rules are simple, the first full team to get to the top and grab the relic win. Only the leader of the team may use their weapon. Osman started before he was interrupted by Naruto running past him before the ground cracked when he jumped high into the air and the groups watched as Naruto got most of the way up the cliff before he eventually went over the top of the cliff. Why does that troublesome blonde has to always rush into things without thinking? Exclaimed Shikamaru, he was still there because he need to collect a little bit more of intel before going to search for an explanation of Naruto's memories, returning only partially. Did we just win? Ruby asked before they all heard a shout and saw an orange shape jumping back off the cliff and start falling towards the ground. Naruto hit the ground with a thumb and he thanked his increased durability for the fact he only got a bruised chest for hitting the ground. That had to hurt. Simply comment Jiraiya and everyone agree with him. You would know since I have hit you even harder since we were kids. Comment with a bit of humor Tsunade making everyone laugh. Was your journey enlightening? Osman asked after a moment and Naruto raised his hand and flipped the man off. The man brushed a finger off before going back to his explanation. If the entire team doesn't reach the top at the same time, then there are some surprises at the top that will be waiting to send them back down. Osman said, Naruto's eyes twitched. I seriously doubt that Naruto would ever get over that bad habit of always rushing into things. Said an exasperated Hinata. Yeah but then he wouldn't the idiotic blonde that you love. Comment Tamari. You okay? Ren asked as he helped Naruto stand back up and the blonde boy just nodded his head. The leader of the team must be the one to collect the relic and make the plan to climb up the side of the cliff. To make things more interesting though Osman said as he pressed a button on his cane and everybody was jerked from where they were standing as some strange handcuff-like device attached to their hands and pulled them to somebody else. Naruto and Blake were attached together. Ruby, Weiss and Yang were connected. John and Nora were stuffed together. Finally, Ren and Puru were connected at the wrist. Those are some interesting pairings. Said Minato. I felt sorry for that Ren guy, being pair with that girl can't be easy for someone like him. Said Tsunade. I actually think they are a cute couple, it kind of reminds me of Naruto and Hinata. Objected Tamari. I'm more worried about that Puru girl being paired with that John guy, they are too many levels apart. Said a worried Kushina. It was Himawari who responded her. You just said that because you identify yourself with her Bachan. Although everyone think that was funny, nobody laughed fearing they would incur Kushina's wrath, meanwhile Jiraiya had discreetly took out his notepad and was writing in it. You will travel up the cliffs while attached to somebody else. Osman said before he walked away and got on his chopper, before all their hair was blown back by the wind, the thing created as it started to fly away. You may begin. Osman said just before he got out of hearing distance. I can work with this. Ren said after a moment before he and Puru went over to John and the singing Nora to talk about how they were going to climb up the cliff. Team Ruby huddle up. Ruby shouted quickly and the five grouped together in a circle with their heads nearly touching as they lowered themselves to her level. Ruby looked at them all for a second before she took a deep breath. Any ideas? She asked sheepishly and Yang looked at Naruto. Everyone facepalmed when Ruby said that while they were thinking how does she manage to be chosen as team leader. How about Foxy throws us all up before jumping up himself? Yang suggested in a questioning tone, and Naruto shook his head and held up his and Blake's linked arms. Can't do that. Throwing you or jumping with these would only hurt one of us in the end. Naruto told her after a moment, because if he did do it, the end result would be one of the girls losing an arm or worse. The girls gulped slightly when they heard that, before Weiss thought of something. Maybe we can use your weapon and having somebody carry the rest of us up the way. Weiss said as she looked directly at Naruto, and he looked at RWBY's weapon for a second before shaking his head. I have no idea how to use it, so no go also, would you stop making me do all the work? Naruto shouted when he realized that so far the only plans that had been made involved him doing all the work. The girls looked sheepish for a moment at his accusation, before Blake brightened up when she had an idea. What is wrong with girls nowadays? Are they really that weak that they are giving Naruto all the physical work? Asked and irritate Tsunade, internally cursing this girls for being so weak and neglecting her physical training. They should come with a plan quickly or the other teams is going to beat them. Simply said Gaara, and everybody saw that the other team already have a heads up against Naruto's team. Naruto and I will climb up the cliff first and you three hold on to Naruto's tail as we climb. Blake suggested, and she saw Naruto's deadpan expression before she looked at his tail and saw his had wrapped it around his own torso to keep it from being grabbed. She wanted to face palm when she remembered that his tail was very fuzzy and the chance of them falling off was pretty high. Seriously, what is with your girls? Naruto asked with a twitching eye and RWBY pouted at him slightly. Oh come on Mr. Fuzzy, you know that you like helping us. RWBY said in a cutie voice before she got an idea of her own. Oh. I got something. How about this? RWBY said as she jerked forward to grab Naruto's tail before she yanked on the handcuffs and sent all 5 members of the team into the dirt. RWBY blushed when she realized that her face was in Naruto's neck and that both Yang and Weiss were at his sides. She felt something under his gut and saw that Blake was smooched between herself and Naruto. That's my apprentice. Now Naruto, make all those girls part of your harem. Shouted Jiraiya, only to be beaten again by every woman in the room. Lucky. Shut up John. Naruto shouted up as he saw John and his team had already started climbing the mountain. They were just using John's sword to make grooves for themselves to grab onto and gain leverage over the cliff. Naruto looked at the cliff for a second as the girls got off him before he lightly pulled Blake along with his towards the cliff stone surface. You have an idea? Blake asked, and Naruto put his free hand on the wall of the canyon and he applied pressure to the wall. Naruto used his other hand and grabbed Blake's before placing it on the wall. What is he doing? Asked Amari. She and the rest of the ladies have stopped hitting Jiraiya in order to prevent being tossed around like yesterday. It was Shikamaru who answered her. I don't know, but I have a bad feeling about this. You feel that? Naruto asked, and Yang decided it was time for her to speak up. I'll bite, why are you fondling the wall? Yang with a purr to her voice as she teased the two of them. The wall is moist, so there is water on the other side of the cliff seeping through. Blaked Yang before Naruto decided to pitch in for the explanation. Not just water, on the other side of the cliff there is some sort of pocket full of water. We have to be careful with this wall or else. Naruto started before he heard something. Looking up at John's team, he saw they all stopped moving up the wall as John's sword stuck a bit deeper than it had before. Small amounts of water leaked out before cracks started to form all over the walls of the canyon. I hate when I'm right about these things. Said Shikamaru, who had a displeased face. I would say that you jinxed them by your early comment if it wasn't for the fact that problems always seems to follow Naruto. Said Tsunade. John. Nora. RWBY shouted as Team Juniper was blasted off the side of the cliff when it burst open and warm waters started flooding the canyon. Naruto and Blake jumped into action as they ran to catch the 4 that were falling. Naruto looked at his tail for a second before unwrapping it from his torso and waving it at the team. I got you guys. Naruto explained as he caught and wrapped his tail around John and Nora before they hit the ground with his extra limp. Blake and he shared a single glance before they turned face to face and started to hold hands as they ran under the falling Ren and Purr. The boy and girl landed in their arms before they safely slid to the ground on their feet. Naruto used his tail to safely place Nora and John on the ground right after. Those two work really well together even though they just meet. Said Kushina. The which Minato answer. Apparently that Osban knew that they would get to work together or he would disband the team. Not necessarily Minato-sama, he could just let the team assignation be like that out of tradition and just hope that the teams will eventually get to work together. Said Gaara. Those comments make everyone think that Osban was a calculating and wiser man than what he showed, or that he was an idealistic fool that rely on luck too much, just like Naruto used to be in his early years as Holage, something that those who live it didn't want to repeat. Thanks for the save. I thought I saw a bright light for a second. John said as more cracks appeared on the wall and more water gushed into the closed canyon. Naruto was the first to notice that the water was already up to their knees and continuing to rise. I never saw a bright light when I died, did you? Asked Minato. Well, to be fair, your soul was sealed inside the Shinigami, so your case doesn't count, dear, but you are right, I never saw a light when I die. Said Kushina. But I did, Kushina-san. Said Hinata. That may be because dad was at your side when you died, Ka-san, and you know that 2 cents chakra is as bright as a sun. Exclaimed Himawari. Finally Jiraiya threw his 2 cents. Everybody experienced death in different ways. For me, I saw the most important things of my life flashing through my eyes, being the last thing that I saw was Naruto's face. Everybody was shocked by this, not only because Jiraiya had told them how were his final moments on Earth, but also because in all these years no one have talked about their deaths, something that was personal to everyone. They reflected on this a little bit while returning to look at the screen. Thank goodness you guys are safe. Ruby shouted as she and the ones she was chained to went over to them, and Weiss looked at the rising water levels. Great, now we get to all drown. Weiss told them sarcastically before they all froze when they felt the ground shake and the water ripple. The wall of the canyon shook and rocks started to fall from the cliff and land in the water as more liquid started to gush out of the canyon wall. Anyone knows how to swim? Ren asked, and everyone raised their hands as the water level went up to their necks. Ruby and Whis, the shortest of the group, were already being forced to swim to breath. Ruby noticed she felt lighter before she saw that Naruto was holding her weapon so that she wasn't weighed down by it. A gentleman should always help a lady in need. Comment Jiraiya, shocking everyone that he said something that wasn't perverted only to be ruined by his next words. So that he can win his way to her heart and do all kind of hero things with her. And in a second he was being beat by every woman in the room while the other men just pity him for not knowing when to shut up. I don't like this very much. Blake commented to herself as now most of the group was floating while Naruto seemed to be having trouble holding Ruby's weapon and swim at the same time. Metal and water doesn't normal mix together well. They all felt the water ripple again as the cracks grew larger and the walls of the canyon shook even more. That doesn't sound normal. Said Purah, the red-haired Juniper member said as they looked at the wall of the canyon. I don't see how this could get much worse. John stated before he saw everyone glaring at him besides Nora. She was just happily floating on her back, but his sweat dropped when he realized he may have made things worse. Everyone else in the afterlife was also glaring at John for what he had said until Tamari finally said what everybody was thinking. If that kid doesn't pull his act together and change his attitude, he is going to end dead pretty soon and not necessarily killed by the enemy. John, shut up. Yang said neutrally as they all floated up higher and higher, while Naruto had to use his tail just to keep himself afloat. With a great throw he tossed Ruby's weapon to the top of the cliff and he sighed in relief as his load got lighter. Hey, at least we are floating up to the top. Ren pointed out and everyone nodded in agreement before the canyon wall shook again and more cracks appeared along the surface. Not only that, but everyone got the feeling that something bad was going to happen. And again everyone was either mentally cursing Naruto's luck to attract problems and the universe twist's sense of humor for making his life a lot more complicated anytime it have a chance. Crack. That didn't sound good. Y said before everyone looked as the canyon wall burst open to show a small group of 7 black sharks with white masks on their faces. Each shark was about the size of a truck and they were all swimming towards them slowly. Crap. Everyone stay near the edge of the wall and try to climb up. Ruby shouted after a moment when her leader's side seemed to kick in and without a moment to waste most of the group did as she said. The sharks passed under them just as they got out of the water and started climbing, but the water was quickly catching up to them. Holy shit. Grim also have aquatic types. And a shark of all thing. Exclaimed Kushina. Why does it have to be sharks of all things? He have enough bad experience with sharks with Kisum and his attempts to kidnap him. Exclaimed the Hinata with a sad tone. I'm actually glad that he has a chance to fight grim sharks so he can discharge all his pent-up anger he has against Kisum and the Akatsuki. Said Jiraiya. But no one understand what he means, so Minato asked, what do you mean, sensei? Well, since he hasn't recovered his complete memory he still thinks that the war against the Akatsuki is still going, so he needs to release his frustration of not being able to help his friends in the war even though all this has already happened and that the war had been over for years. And that make everyone realize that Naruto would be devastated once he found out that he wasn't in another world, but that he was trapped in a reincarnation endless cycle and that he could not be reunited with them. Take this. Naruto shouted as he waved his tail as shot needles at the sharks, only for them to start floating in the water before they reached the sharks. I know this isn't the right time to say this, but I think this is the first time your tail didn't solve the problem right away. Yang commented and Naruto twitched in annoyance. She was right, now wasn't the time for her to bring this up. He couldn't help that his tail needles floated just like clumps of fir wood. Ah. Everyone looked at Naruto, shouted in pain when one of the sharks jumped out of the water and chomped down onto his tail. Naruto was jerked off the cliff as he and Blake were yanked into the water by the shark that was biting onto Naruto's tail. "Nuo." Almost everyone watching shout before Jiraiya calmed them, saying that Naruto had faced even direst situations and that no doubt he would emerge victorious from this one too. "Blake." "Naruto." A good number of the group yelled as the water turned red around where they sank into the filling canyon. "Everyone keep climbing. We can't do anything for them by going into the water. Those two have a better chance of getting out if we don't get in their way." Purah shouted when she saw that RWBY was about to jump off the cliff and go into the water. She had a few tears at the edges of her eyes as well, since even she knew that the chances of helping them were as slim as the chances of them coming back out of the water. "You should not abandon you comrades." "Never." Shouted Kushina, worried for the well-being of her son. It was Minato who tried to calm her. There isn't much they can do about it, none of them seem to have experience with fighting aquatic foes, so they would only put themselves in danger. But before Kushina could shout to Minato for not caring for his son, Gaara interrupt them. "What is that? You two better come back up." Yang thought in anger as she looked at the other shark swimming around. Seconds later, bubbles formed before Blake popped out of the water and landed on the cliff wall, and she quickly caught herself and became steady again. Yet, there was no Naruto with her. Everyone gasped when they saw that severed chain. "You fool." Blake shouted at the water in rage, and honestly it wasn't hard to figure out what Naruto had done. He had ripped his handcuff off to save Blake from going down with him. Why did he do that? He should be looking for a way to also escape, not become a martyr, said an even more alarmed Kushina. All the sharks swam towards the same spot before everyone saw the water glow a bright orange color. Everyone waited for something to happen, and before they knew it, the water became completely red in that one spot. Shark body parts started to float to the surface and everyone turned their heads away sadly. But the shinobi have a different reaction. Instead of being sad, they were mad that they didn't see what Naruto had done to those sharks. "Fuck, that hurt." They all whipped their heads towards the water as saw a very wet Naruto swimming towards them with a smile on his face. "I'm going to punch you when I get my hands on you." Blake warned him, and Naruto stopped swimming towards them. "That is not something you should say to the person who saved you," reproached Hinata, only to be questioned by Kushina. "You shouldn't say something like that, Hinata, after all you would have reacted the same way." Hinata get her face down and blushed because what Kushina say was true. "I'm good right here then," Naruto said quickly as he started floating up to the top of the cliff as they climbed up the old-fashioned way. Jumping out of the water just as they reached the top, Naruto and Team RWBY started to run for it just as Team Juniper got over the edge. "That isn't what you shall be doing, Naruto. Just accept the rightful feminine fury," exclaimed Jiraiya, surprising everyone, so Tsune'd get to him and start to check him. "Jiraiya, do you feel okay? Do you have the flu or something? What make you say something like that?" "I'm fine, Tsune'd Haim. I just say that because it is better to accept the feminine fury right away than to try to run for it, which would only make it worse," said Jiraiya, acting like the sage that he was. Of course, this surprised every man and women that were there. They never thought that Jiraiya willingly accept every beating so he could calm the women that he wronged and to prevent make things worse, but Shikamaru saw a flaw in his reasoning. "But Jiraiya-sama, then why did you always run when you were discovered peeping on the women bath?" "Ah, that is because I wanted them to chase me so they would do some more exercise and maintain her magnificent figures." This made Tsunade, Kushina, Minato and Hiruzen look at Jiraiya with incredulous looks. Jiraiya, everybody knew that Jiraiya peeped to do research for his books, but they never thought that he have other agenda. "Naruto." "Yang." RWBY yelled, and with a nod they both caught one of her feet just as she jumped into the air. One mighty throw later sent RWBY flying towards a small blue item hanging from a tree. "Victory, Team RWBY." Slap. "Ow." Naruto learned something today, and that was apparently girls didn't like it when you risked your own life to make sure they were safe, or at least that was what he thought the lesson was, as a blushing Blake held her palm in pain from hitting Naruto's toughened skin. "He should have seen that coming after all the ladies he have rescued," said Shikamaru. "Well, Naruto has always put the well-being of his friends above his own, that is why Seal love him so much," said Hinata. "Yeah. We won." RWBY shouted as the Team Juniper looked down and collapsed on their knees when they realized they would have to do detention. "Hey Foxy, how's your tail?" Yang questioned, and Naruto looked at his own tail to see that it was perfectly fine right now. His advanced healing having already taken care of the puncture marks. "Just fine, but the next time anyone says things can't get worse, I am going to punch them," Naruto said with a twitching eyes at the Jinx phrase. He hated the saying. "As we all do, Naruto," said Hiruzen, and everybody just nodded in agreement. It have been almost weeks since Naruto and his team have faced the grim sharks, and during that period of time Naruto's life in school seemed to be really boring. Most of his classes consist in him sit at a desk and pay attention to some boring lecture. Most of Naruto's friends and family were really bored after just a few hours of this and decide to do something more productive with their time, so Shikamaru and Temari went to their home to start researching the reincarnation process and what does it mean that Naruto just recover part of his memories. Hinata and Himawari went to see Bolt and the rest of the family and try to convince them to visit the auditorium sometime in the future. They were also going to see if they could convince the Faunus expert to come sooner. Kushina and Minato go to look for some of Naruto's closest friends and invite them to see his new life, a difficult task since most of them weren't interested anymore in watching Naruto's life since it reminds them that the blonde may never come back to them. This was going to be especially hard for Sasuke and Sakura, who have spent almost all their time looking for a way to free Naruto's soul and give him the eternal rest that he deserves. Tsunade had passed the last days beating Jiraiya for his shameful conduct, then she would heal him to perfect health, only to beat him again with even more force. Jiraiya was glad that he was already dead, or he would have died for sure the first day Tsunade started beating him. Finally Hiruzen and Gaara stay at the auditorium watching just in case something interesting happened. It turns out nothing happened, but they call them all back when it was the weekend in hopes that things would get interesting now that they didn't have more class for the week. Only Temari and Shikamaru were missing since they have already started to do some research, while Sarutobi bring Konohamaru with him this time. Come on Naruto. We are all going to the forest together for some team training. RWBY shouted up to Naruto as she smacked his form in his hammock a few times to try and wake him up and she saw some movement before her face twitched. She saw him flipping her off before pulling his body back into the hammock. She jumped at the middle finger before she pouted at him even though he couldn't see it. Naruto. That is not a way to treat a young girl like her. Lecture Kushina as if Naruto could gear her, but nobody stopped her not wanting to receive her anger. I am not feeling good right now RWBY. I wonder what the heck is wrong with Foxy. Yang thought as she watched RWBY try and swing Naruto out of the bed before Blake next to her sighed in slight annoyance. If it was at RWBY or Naruto was unknown, but she could tell that she was about to fix this problem one way or another. Wait, Naruto is sick. How and when did that happen? Asked Tsunade worried for the blonde. I don't know Tsunade-sama, he seemed fine last night. Answered Gaara with a tone that barely indicated he was worried, even after all these years he still have problems to show his emotions. Are you sure about that? Asked a worried Hinata to which Gaara and Hiruzen only nod. Is he still not out of bed? Why said as she came out of the bathroom in her fighting clothes, which would normally be called fancy clothes because of the battle skirt that RWBY and Weiss both had on. Naruto, Yang, and Blake were confused on why they thought wearing a skirt into battle was smart, then again RWBY and Weiss didn't understand why Naruto never wore any shoes. That may be a Franus thing. Maybe him not feeling alright is also a Franus thing. Said Minato trying to cheer up everyone and failing miserable. Wait, is Naruto Nai-san a Franus now? What kind of Franus? Asked curiously Konohamaru and Hiruzen told him that he was a fox-rabbit hybrid. Why aren't you feeling good? RWBY asked as she touched one of the bigger lumps in the hammock that was normally the tail, but when she poked it, everyone covered their ears when they heard a loud as hell yelp come from Naruto. His head was seen a moment later from the top of the hammock and he was sweating and his skin looked pale. Overall, he looked like he hadn't been able to get a good night's sleep for a while now. The pained look on his face didn't help his image right now. Oh Kami, he is not only sick, he looks terrible. Those girls better take him to the hospital as fast as they can, or I will make their afterlife a living hell if something more happens to my son. Exclaimed a furious Kushina that was joined by Minato, Tsunade, Hinata, Himawari and even Hiruzen. My tail is killing me okay. Naruto shouted at RWBY in frustration, but mostly out of genuine pain. His tail had been killing him ever since it had been bitten by the grim shark and the pain has been getting worse. During day 1 it had just been a sore feeling, but now it was 5 days later and it felt like his tail was on fire. He couldn't even shoot a single needle if he wanted to simply because that caused him even more pain. Did he just say his tail is hurting him? What does this mean Tsunade-sama? Asked an even more worried Hinata. Why are you asking me? I'm a doctor not a vet. Tails are not something I'm experienced with. She answered. Sorry Tsunade-sama, but you were his doctor for many years, I just thought that you may have an idea what was wrong with him. Apologize Hinata. Tsunade just let out a sigh, understanding that Hinata was worried and didn't mean any harm. Your tail? RWBY asked after a moment that she needed to process that information and the girl saw as Naruto lifted his tail out of the hammock. Blake winced when she saw that the fur was a bit off color and it lacked the life it normally had. It was shaking like he was having trouble moving it. And that was true, he had been having a lot of trouble. For Kami's sake, his tail is in a really bad shape, should we call Hana or Tsume and ask them what could this mean? Asked Kushina even more worried than before. I don't think they could help either, Hana is an amazing vet, but she doesn't have any knowledge of Franus anatomy, so they have the same problem as Tsunade. Said Hiruzen. Not to mention that trying to do a diagnosis with only seeing him and not being able to physically examine the gaki would be almost impossible. Comment Tsunade. Yes, my tail. Now please leave me alone. Naruto said as he went back into the hammock, but he left his tail out of the hammock and it fell limply. How long has your tail been hurting you? Yang asked out loud, since with his tail killing him, he was pretty much out of commission with this kind of weakness. His tail was longer than his body and nearly as thick. That made it a huge target if somebody wanted to attack it, and the fact his tail was swelling up didn't say anything good either. Ever since I was bitten by the shark. Naruto answered before he jumped out of the hammock with a yelp when Yang smacked his tail lightly. She whistled innocently down at his glaring form before she winced when she saw he was in genuine pain. He wasn't trying to get out of training with them, and Blake was giving her a silent death glare for causing unneeded pain. Not many Fronis actually had tails, and the ones that did took immense pride in that feature. They would never joke about a hurt tail, since to them that would be like saying their tails were weak. I think we should get you to the nurse's office. Blake said as she helped Naruto stand up with a groan, as the effort in moving his tail just caused it to hurt that much worse. RWBY sighed for a moment in depression before she gained a determined look on her face and raised her hand in the air. Finally someone shows some common sense. They should do that instead of just questioning him. Say Hinata that was getting a little angry at the fact that these girls haven't taken Naruto to see a doctor or nurse right away. But why are they taking him to a nurse, shouldn't they take him to a doctor or a hospital? Asked Kushina almost crying, she had always been worried for Naruto's reincarnations when they were only babies, almost as if she was actually there and taking care of them. Minato have once explained some of them that this was because she never got the chance to look out for Naruto when he was a baby, so she was compensating for that, but always thought that if Kushina had really take care of Naruto when he was her baby, then right now she wouldn't come and see all his reincarnations crying because they were hungry or need a new diaper. Relax Kushina, I'm sure the nurse is just as competent as any doctor, she has to be put in charge of the well-being of all the students in the academy, for all we know she could be a doctor, but they just call her school nurse out of tradition. Reassure her Tsunade. Okay girls and Naruto. Team RWBY's next mission is getting Naruto to the nurse office. Let's go. RWBY shouted cheerfully, only to receive either glares, Naruto and Blake, or amused smiles, Yang and Weiss. She was surprised that Weiss was smiling and Naruto was glaring. Usually he smiled when she said something like that, and with Blake, it was just that a friend's safety came above amusement. Of course, normally Naruto didn't feel like his tail was being ripped to shreds, so that may be the reason he wasn't finding very much joy from her words. He is in so much pain. We have to do something. Shout at the same time Kushina and Hinata, everyone else was also worried, but they knew that it doesn't matter how much they wanted to help, they couldn't do it, or not at least without scarring Naruto to death. They remember the first time that Naruto's reincarnation recover his whole memory, and Minato and Kushina went to see him in the form of Ghost, only to almost kill him of a heart attack when he saw them. Apparently Naruto's fear of ghosts was something that he has never get over it, and as a result every time someone from his past tried to talk to him, he would always freak out and either run away or faint. So they decide to stop trying to contact him until they find a way to make him get over his fear of ghosts. Actually, I think it would be better if we got him to the Fronis nurse, since she knows more about Fronis than the regular nurse. Weiss actually said as she attempted to help Naruto out before they heard a rustle and saw Naruto back in his hammock. Hell no. I don't do nurses. Naruto shouted as the memory of all the times he had been smacked by the nurses, Sakura, or the doctors, Tsunade, replayed in his head. Since those were the only people that Tsunade allowed to help him besides Shizune, he had a good reason not to think well of doctors. He was used to his doctors being short-tempered people with violent streaks. Everybody in the room felt a chill run down their spines, so carefully they turned their heads only to see a furious Kushina, the back of her hair move as if it have life of their own, while her face was darkened by the front part, but her eyes were glowing with so much killer intent which was directed at Tsunade. You scare my son so much that now he is afraid of all doctors and nurses. Do you realize how much troubles can this cause him? Tsunade could only muster a half smile before sincerely apologized to Kushina. She was really afraid of her not only because she had mistreated Naruto, granted it was with no bad intention, and most of the time it was because he did something stupid or irritated her, but because how much Kushina resembles her grandmother Mito and the Uzumaki women are really scary. Blake go get John and his team. RWBY said after a moment and Blake caught on to what she was planning. Naruto was going to that nurse, one way or another. If they had to force him to the nurse's office, then that was what they were going to have to do. RWBY watched as Blake left the room, and less than a minute later Nora burst through the open door with a grin on her face. Ren was next with John, and finally Blake with Purah coming in. Okay Foxy, we can do this the easy way or the painful way. Yang told Naruto just as Nora jumped into the air and landed in Naruto hammock with a grin on her face. The room was in total silence for exactly 3 seconds. Everyone watching was stuck at what the orange hair have done. It was finally Konohamaru who speak. Why did she do that? Get off my tail, Nora. The group saw movement in the hammock and limbs were moving around at a fast pace and both grunts of pain from both male and female were heard before the entire hammock ripped and they both fell through the bottom. Naruto winced when they both landed on his tail and Blake noticed the smell of blood. Looking at Naruto's tail, she noticed that the fur was spotted with growing red stains. You're bleeding? Blake asked when she noticed some white sticking out of his tail. Something that was both sharp and pointed and John saw it too after a moment and bent down to look at it. This motion alerted Purah to the item and everyone winced when they saw what was causing him so much pain. There was a shark tooth digging deeply into his tail, possibly multiple shark teeth. A shark teeth? When did a shark bite him? Is this some evil revenge Kisame plot against him? Asked Konohamaru, really confused by what was happening. A few days ago Naruto have to fight some shark grims in order to save the people that are around him. As Kisame's involvement in all this, I seriously doubted since it was something too random to be planned. Answer him, Jiraiya. Still, Konohamaru's comment make me realize that those teeth should have disappeared once the grims were killed. Analyze Minato, making all wonder who that was possible. This is going to hurt. John said as he quickly grabbed the shark tooth and ripped it out and a bit of blood escaped the wound before it healed up right away. Naruto grit his teeth before he noticed his tail was feeling a little better. What the hell did you just do? Naruto shouted before he saw the 3-inch long shark tooth in his hand and everyone whistled at how much pain something like that could have caused. No wonder he was in pain if that thing was trying to push itself out of his tail, and if he was in that much pain, it was only natural he would be irritable and maybe feel a little sick as well. I think I may know what happened if those teeth didn't disappear and instead seemed to attach themselves to Naruto's tail. It may be because they were using his energy to maintain his form and keep existing, but that makes me wonder how is that possible and if that is the reason that Grim attack human and faunus. Said Hiruzen. All of them reflect on what he have say, but the thought of Grimm's feeding of the energy of humans was a scary one. Finally Minato interrupt their thoughts when he say that they should get a Grimm expert and discuss this with them. Oh yeah, we are taking you to the nurse. RWBY said before they saw that Naruto was giving them all a look of defiance. So as one unit, the 8 people jumped at Naruto to try and subdue him long enough to drag him to the nurse. That plan ended with everyone besides Naruto moaning on the ground in pain, holding various body parts that he accidentally hit when they had jumped him. We forgot he has super strength. Ren thought before he covered his now bleeding nose and he thanked God that he didn't end up like John covering his balls in pain. Nora and RWBY were bouncing on one legs holding their knees while Purah was holding her left breast in pain. Yang was just knocked out with a red mark on her forehead while Blake was curled up into and holding both her stomach and butt. She got hit twice. Now you see why I have to so strict with him. He never do as I say or stay still even when I was just exonimating him. Tell me how am I supposed to heal him if he struggles all the time? Exclaimed Tsunade to Kushina, who only sighed in defeat knowing that she was right and it was her son's fault. Did you have to use me as a shield? RWBY yelled at Weiss and the girl just pointed to everyone with an elegant wave of her hand. That is so something really low to do, especially to a teammate. That girl is also going to get in a lot of troubles if she doesn't change her attitude. State Hiruzen and everybody agree with him, after all in Konoha was famous for its teamwork. Rather that than ending up like all of you. Weiss said with a small smirk on her face before she yelped when she felt something kick her in the butt. At that same moment John started to stand up and time seemed to slow down and Weiss looked on in horror as she fell straight towards John. This is going to be good. Nora thought with devious smile on her face even as she bounced on one leg. No. Weiss thought before she and John collided. Lips to lips. That reminds me of the day we were assigned to our genin teams. Thought Hinata, remembering that disgraceful day as the day that the team of Sasuke stole Naruto's first kiss, a kiss that should have been hers. John's eyes lit up in joy before he saw the hatred in Weiss's eyes and jumped back as fast as possible. He completely missed the fact that Blake was behind him and ended up tripping over her and everyone winced when Naruto froze as the blonde-haired team leader landed on his tail. His eyes were open and unmoving. Yo-ho! Nora shouted as she waved her hand in front of his face and John covered his face and nuts to keep him safe from Naruto rage. I'm going to die and it is why aren't I dead yet? John thought before he started to stand up and Naruto's eyes blinked. RWBY figured out what had happened and she quickly pushed John out of the way and jumped on top of Naruto's tail in the exact same spot. Naruto froze again and RWBY winced at both causing him pain and the fact another shark tooth was now also poking the back of her thigh. That little girl shouldn't be causing my Tusan more pain. Shouted Himawari, surprising everyone except Hinata, who knew that to her family was something really important and hated seeing her dad in pain. Somebody quickly pick us up and take him to the nurse. Ruby said as she kept Naruto still by pressing against something pointed in his tail. Blake stood up with a wince and with an impressive show of strength and hefted Naruto's frozen form over her shoulder while the newly awakened Yang picked up both Naruto's tail and Ruby on top of it. We got it from here. Blake told Team Juniper, so with a nod the team separated and went their separate ways. 2 hours later. That should be the last of them. A nurse with barriers sticking out of the top of her head said as she placed the last shark tooth inside of a jar filled with teeth. The only people in the room at the moment were the nurse, Ms. Shizuko, Blake, and Naruto. The others had been told to wait outside. He have so many teeth in his tail and only until today he shows signs of being ill. That is some high tolerance to pain he has got, said a surprised Tsunade. Well, it shouldn't surprise you, Tsunade-sama, after all the injuries he have sustained during his battles and he still keep fighting. The only thing that seemed to slow him down is when he lost his arm at the end of the war. Answer Hinata that was well aware of every injury that Naruto have suffered in his life. What about the swelling? Blake asked when Naruto tails, while the healthier color again, was still slightly swollen from something. The nurse held up a vial of green liquid before she took a shot out and quickly injected the liquid into Naruto's tail before he could notice what was happening. He barely noticed it really, but that was mostly because a small needle compared to 24 shark teeth was nothing. Are we done here? Naruto asked before Shizuko pulled out a needle with a blue liquid in it, but this time she looked at Blake. Not quite. Ms. Belladonna is overdue for some of her shots, so why don't we take care of that now? Shizuko said, and Blake froze up when she saw the confused look in Naruto's eyes. So that was what she was hiding, said Gaara. What do you mean, Gaara-kun? Asked Hinata. That Blake girl was hiding the fact that she is also a Faunus since the first day she met Naruto and the others. Why she did it, I still don't understand it, but maybe now she would explain this to Naruto. And with that final comment they continued to watch the screen. I thought you were a doctor for Faunus. Naruto asked, and the nurse looked at Blake with a raised eyebrow. Blake looked at the floor with an ashamed look on her face before realization hit Naruto and his eyes widened when he figured it out. Frankly, he should have noticed this before now. Blake had amazing knowledge of Faunus, compassion towards Faunus. She didn't like when people made fun of him or other Faunus. Blake Belladonna was a Faunus. I have been meaning to tell this to you for a while now, Naruto. Blake said as she reached up and took her black bow off her head and Naruto was able to see 2 small cat ears sticking out of the top of her head. She twitched when she saw him stand up and walk to her before her eyes widened when he scratched her behind the ear. She blinked a few times before she blushed lightly when she saw him grin at her. You know, I think you look a lot better like this. It feels like I am meeting the real you for the first time. My name's Uzumaki Naruto, a fox rabbit Faunus. Naruto said with a grin on his face and her eyes widened before they closed and she smiled. When they opened they had an emotion Naruto couldn't really describe in them. Nice to meet you, Naruto, my name is Blake Belladonna and I am a cat Faunus. Black said, and never before had those words felt as good to say as they did at that moment. She then twitched when she felt something poke her in the thigh. She turned her head and looked at the nurse injecting her with whatever was in the needle. And there is the Uzumaki charm that we all know and love, said in a proud tone Jiraiya. I think his charm is more a Naruto thing than an Uzumaki trait, no offense Himawari, said Konohamaru. None taken, in fact I agree with you that Tusan have a special charm that was exclusive of him. Himawari told him. Did I ruin something? The nurse asked and both students looked at her like she was crazy. Shizuko gave Blake a small wink before tilting her head towards Naruto in a suggestive way. Blake blushed and put her bow back in her hair before she grabbed Naruto by the arm and pulled him along with her out of the office in a huff. Naruto just looked confused at the sudden movement. He saw the blush on Blake's face just before it faded away to a mild blush. Was Blake sick? And he is as oblivious as always, some things never change, said Tsunade looking at Hinata while she said. Hinata didn't say anything and just dropped his head while blushing, but in the inside she was already planning how to break that Blake catgirl when she died so she wouldn't try to steal her place at Naruto's heart as the #1 wife as she has done with all the girls that have come after her. She didn't mind any more sharing Naruto, but she would not relinquish her place as his first wife and #1 love. First of all, an apology for only updating 2 chapters. I have too much work to do and I could only spare enough time to write and update this. As you can see, I'm going to have the people watching Naruto's live change frequently, only having Kushina, Minato and Hinata stay all the time for obvious reasons and Jiraiya because he is a personal favorite. But I'm having the rest come and go depending on the story since it would be too hard to have 30 or more characters and give them all a reaction at each chapter. I already have some ideas of who and when I'm going to use certain characters, but if anyone want to see someone of the Naruto universe, let me know who and I would see in which chapter 1 can put him in. Also, if you already know where in the original story I can use it, tell me so it can be easier. As a last note, I require the help of someone that can imitate B's raping style, since I suck with rhymes, and I mean that I can't make things rhyme, even if my life depend on it, so if anyone could help me, please send me a PM. After Naruto's visit to the nurse and her extracting the grim sharks from his tail, everyone in the auditorium continued to see his life. Nice day outside. Blake said in a controlled voice as she and the rest of Team RWBY sat together closely outside the school gym. They were each wearing their usual clothes, and RWBY had on a face that was showing she was having fun. Yang was looking down at something in amusement, while Weiss looked like she would rather be doing something else. 993, 994, 995, 996, 997, 998, 999, 1000. It's good to see that the Gaki still takes his training seriously, even after getting such humongous strength. Commented Jiraiya. Naruto-kun always take his training seriously even after becoming Hokage, he always took time to keep training and became stronger, he always say that it didn't matter if the world was at peace, you never knew when someone would try to end it or hurt his loved ones. Said Hinata, remembering the time that she and Naruto were married. Yeah, but now that Toussaint's strength is at a point that is comparable to Tsunade-sama's, and he is doing without any kind of energy or reinforcement or manipulation, so how much stronger could he get? Asked Himawari. He is doing it mostly to keep that level of strength rather than getting stronger, but since he is a Franus his body could get stronger, we may have to ask it to someone that knows more about Franus than us. Answered Tsunade. I have talked to my friend Vanilla and her mother and they going to join us tomorrow. Said Himawari, concluding the conversation. Yang licked her lips when she looked under them and saw Naruto doing push-ups with one hand while standing upside down on said hand. That was actually what brought them to what they were doing right now. They were all sitting on Naruto's tail, being held up in midair so that he could at least attempt to get a good workout. This academy's gym didn't have anything he could use to work out with and get any real results. Nothing went to the weight he needed to actually feel the burn, and even now he wasn't feeling the burn. Maybe I should call you Muscles instead of Foxy because you have some wicked abs, baby. Yang said in her usual teasing tone before she nudged her little sister in the ribs with that same teasing smile on her face when she saw RWBY's blush. The girl had never really had much experience with hot guys, so seeing Naruto without a shirt on with a light sheen of sweat was certainly new for her. Yeah, she had seen the same image when he had been in pain, but that was more of a sickly sweat with his pained expression. That girl is too flirtiest with Naruto, and she only seems to want his body, at least that Blake girl is concerned with Naruto's well-being and have share her secret with him, even if it was the nurse that blow her cover. Said Hinata with some discontent in her voice. Are you jealous, Hinata? Asked her Kushina. Hinata couldn't stop herself and she blushed before answering. I'm not Jajilo Ausku Kushina-sama. Of course Kushina didn't believe her and she started to tease her more, the rest of the group could only pity Hinata because once Kushina start to tease someone she doesn't stop, so they left them alone while they continued to look at Naruto's live. You seriously have some freakish arm strength. Weiss commented dryly when Naruto increased the difficulty and started doing his workout with only his index finger. He chuckled dryly at her before he started all over again, before he looked up at them. Yeah, and you girls don't have freaky powers either. Like RWBY's beat power. Naruto started and said girl chuckled to herself and scratched the back of her head. She still didn't know how Naruto was able to move as faster. At her full speed she was able to outdo a car and he had little trouble keeping up with her. Of course at the age of 12 he had outstripped a train before, so going that fast wasn't a problem for him. He did miss his lightning fast speed, but he was glad he had kept his lightning fast reflexes. That didn't seem to stop him from getting eaten twice since coming here though. Fucking snake, fucking shark. You know Haim, it's a shame that Orochimaru isn't here to hear how much Naruto hates his snakes. Said Jiraiya in a cheerful tone. Yeah, his face would be priceless. Too bad he chose to keep using immortality jutsu, but at least he is trying to do something good with his life now, instead of trying to learn every jutsu it existed. She answered. Yes, he has changed a lot, it is still a shame he isn't here with us so we could talk about the old times. Said Jiraiya with a melancholic tone. Yeah, I am pretty fast. Blake has some pretty awesome reflexes though. RWBY said and Blake shrugged. She still hadn't told the rest of the girls about her being a Franus and Naruto had respected her choice. Her reflexes were simply because she was both a Franus and she had the instincts of a cat. She could react to things without looking, so of course she would have impressive reflexes. That wasn't her special power though, and the others have yet to have gotten the chance to see her power. Weiss has her glyphs and she is pretty fast as well. Blake admitted neutrally and Weiss huffed lightly in pride of her semblance. Her special power to create glyphs to aid her in battle covered for her lack of endurance in a fight. Are those the kind of powers that aura thing gives people nowadays? They seem to be very limited. Said Konohamaru. At first sight they seem limited, but you shouldn't underestimate them for that grandson," said Hiruzen. "Yeah, after all you are a ninja, and as such you should see underneath the underneath," added Minato. Konohamaru agreed with him, but deep inside he still thought that chakra was superior to aura and was cursing that people have become so weak that Naruto have to reincarnate every time the world was in danger. He really missed Naruto. "You really like going all out with your training, don't you, Foxy?" Yang asked with an impressed look at the sheer physical strength Naruto had. She had always known that she was strong, way stronger than most people, but Naruto blew her out of the water. Now that she thought about it she wondered where he got the ideas to train this way. Maybe she could practice with him some time, get in a few sparring sessions. It had been a few weeks since she had been in a good fight. "You haven't seen nothing yet," Naruto said as he stuck his tongue out and lowered himself so that the tip of his tongue was touching the concrete. He winced at the taste, while the girls looked impressed or disgusted in Weiss's case when he started to do push-ups with his tongue. "So who wants to go get some snacks after this?" RWBY asked with a few playful spins on Naruto's tail, which caused him to lose his balance and send them all tumbling to the ground. They all end landing on their feet, besides RWBY who landed on her butt on top of Naruto's back. She gave his back a few pats before standing up and dusting herself off. This of course caused that Kushina stop teasing Hinata and start ranting about RWBY not being careful enough and hurting her son. "Holy crap, are you okay?" Yang asked when she saw blood gushing out of Naruto's mouth and a chunk of his tongue missing from when he bit it. They were about to start worrying before Naruto's super healing kicked in and he grew most of his tongue back. The piece of tongue on the ground started to glow orange before it vanished as well. And that not only caused that Kushina's rage increase, but now she was accompanied by Hinata and Himawari and none of the men in the room tried to stop them. Meanwhile Tsunade watched fascinated how Naruto's tongue grew back immediately. "That is still freaky," Weiss thought, and she promised herself not to be surprised by how advanced his healing seemed to be. He seemed to heal from everything a few seconds after it happened. "My mouth tastes like blood, some snacks would be great right now," Naruto said when Blake handed him his hoodie back and Yang pouted at seeing his abs vanished behind the clothes. What, she was a teenage girl that was very open with the fact she liked cute boys. It wasn't in her personality to hide things and she liked to take the direct approach whenever possible. Naruto was a hot guy, so of course she would enjoy admiring him. "Onward to get ice cream," RWBY shouted as she started running towards the direction of one of the school's cafeteria where they each got the snack of their choice. Yang and RWBY both got ice cream, flavored mint for Yang and chocolate for RWBY. Blake got a tuna fish sandwich which was secretly hilarious to Naruto who knew that she was a cat Franus. She blushed when she saw his amused look and looked away from him. Weiss got simple salad to tide her over until lunch and finally Naruto got 7 large bowls of ramen, 5 of which he was balancing on his tail until they sat down at a table. "Hey Snow Angel. That boy never learns," groaned Jiraiya. Minato couldn't help it and with a grin he answered to him. "Neither could you, sensei." This make everyone burst out in laughs while Jiraiya tried to defend himself only to fail miserable every time and make everyone laugh even harder. He finally stopped when almost all of them have fall to the floor still laughing. Weiss groaned in annoyance when John and the rest of his team joined them at their table moments later. Only John had the idiocy to call her that and she was about to lay into him over it before she was beaten to the punch by Naruto. "You know, that name doesn't fit her at all," Naruto told John after he failed to woo Weiss again. "He certainly reminds me of you, sensei. Whenever you try to ask Tsunade-sama out, are you sure that you never have?" Minato never got to finish that sentence because he became really pale and looked at Jiraiya dumbstruck. "What is the matter, Minato-kun?" asked a worried Kushina. "I was just wondering if Jiraiya-sensei did ever have kids, after all he was always visiting the women of bars and brothels," he said still in a calm voice, but he was scared to the core with that idea. Everybody else also froze at that idea of Jiraiya having kids that nobody knew, that is until Jiraiya answered their question. "For your information, I always have someone to keep an eye on every woman I have ever sleep with, that is actually how my spy network was born actually." That surprised even more everyone in the room that never thought that Jiraiya's legendary spy network original purpose was to keep tabs on women that he have sleep with in order to know if they got pregnant and gave birth to his child. "Then what does fit her?" John asked as he tried to play the part of the cool guy while winking at the annoyed Weiss. "How should I know?" Naruto himself asked and John sat at the table with a dejected look on his face while Nora had her hand slapped away from Naruto's ramen bowl. She gave him a puppy look and his response was ignoring her and eating his ramen. The group exchanged very light conversation while they ate until Yang brought up a topic that made Naruto grit his teeth for a split second. "So who here has had their first kiss?" Yang asked with a playful smile when she saw Naruto, Weiss, John, and Purah react slightly to the question. "Oh, this is going to be good. Thought everyone that knew the story of Naruto's first kiss and were expecting to see his reaction, except for Hinata for obvious reasons. My first one doesn't count. We said with a glare at John, and he looked like he just had something important taken away from him. John then looked at his strawberry soda with a kicked puppy look, since Weiss had a point. It was an accident, so he wasn't going to count it. I have, but it wasn't really anything special. It was more of a dare than anything romantic. Purah said with a smile, and Yang looked at Naruto to see him looking away. She grinned and nudged him in the ribs, and his eyes twitched. Oh, don't you dare to ask him that or you will have to face my wrath when you die. And I will make you regret to be death. Shout Hinata that always consider this topic taboo. So how about you Foxy, did you ever have a special little vixen? Yang asked as she used yet another Fox reference, and he gave her a deadpan look. That was why he just ignored her in favor of using 2 long glowing tail needles like chopsticks to eat his ramen. Oh yeah, his tail needles could now be labeled as an eating utensil. Was there nothing this tail couldn't do besides help him in an underwater fight that is? Wet fur wasn't very effective. Who was she? RWBY asked with a smile on her face before she started to pout at Naruto to try and coax the answer out of him. Nora leaned in closer as well and gave him a goofy grin. Stop trying to coerce him into answer you girls or you will also have to deal with me when you die. Hinata continued to treat the girls and everyone take a step away from her. Fuzzy, you know you want to tell us. Nora said with a wiggle of her eyebrow and Ren smacked his own forehead. This subject was so stupid, but then again the girls did outnumber the boys by 6-3, so most topics usually ended up being a little girly in nature. Please. John said with a pout before Yang and Weiss both smacked their foreheads at the teenage boy. By this time Hinata's anger was almost palpable, but she was also joined by Tsunade and Kushina that were mostly glaring at John for asking something too girly. I really don't like remembering it. Naruto said with a shiver at the memory of not only that damned kiss, but also the beating he got from said kiss. Some things were better left forgotten. He was about to continue eating before he saw Blake holding one of his ramen bowls with a small smile on her face. In her hands was a bottle of hot sauce and his face took on an expression of pure horror. Don't you dare to use ramen as a hostage. Shout Kushina who was also horrified that someone would even try to ruin a perfectly good bowl of ramen. Minato could only pity Blake since he has experienced firsthand the wrath of Kushina when he tried to use ramen as a bride, so using as a hostage could only result in her wrath being even worse. I admit to being curious as well. You wouldn't want anything to happen to your ramen would you? Blake asked and Naruto slammed his head into the table and a long crack appeared on it. It was either humiliation or ruined ramen. Damn it. Okay, don't do anything rash Naruto started before being interrupted by John. Says the man that threw a Deathstalker at an Evermore. John said before he gulped at the look Naruto was sending him with the general vibe causing others to shiver as well. Naruto took a breath before he glared lightly at everyone. It's a shame that they can see or feel the glares that the girls are also throwing at them or they would have stopped the moment they ask. Jiraiya whispered to Hiruzen and make him to snicker. Anyone who laughs will find their clothes mysteriously missing in the morning. Naruto threatened and while the threat didn't really get to the guys, the girls gulped. This had just gotten serious. At seeing their looks, he nodded to himself. Okay, first of all I would like to say that my kiss was completely accidental and meant absolutely nothing. I would also like to point out that I like girls. Naruto said and before he could tell them RWBY and John both heard their weird phone pad thing go off. I hope this would make them drop off the theme of Haruto Nai-san first kiss. Comment Konohamaru. It won't happen, girls don't let things like this get by, hell, I even want to hear this too. Said Himawari receiving approving nods from all the men in the room since the women were still glaring at the girls and John. Dang, it looks like Mr. Osborn wants to see us. RWBY said with a pout and with that distraction, Naruto quickly took his ramen from Blake and ate it all. Naruto sighed in relief for a moment when only RWBY and John stood up and started to walk away. Apparently all the team leaders were being called away for something. So who did you kiss? Yang asked again and Naruto cursed in his head. Told you so. Said Himawari to Konohamaru. Wouldn't you rather wait until Ru? No. All the girls answered as one and Naruto shrank back slightly from shock. Who know that girls could be so pushy? He should have known this after having Sakura as a teammate, she was really bossy with him. Said Konohamaru and he make everyone laugh with the exception of Himawari who had never seen Sakura boss her dad and couldn't imagine it and Hinata who always have a little resent against Sakura for mistreating Naruto when they were younger. Okay, when I was 12 I was pushed and my lips may have touched somebody's lips. Naruto said with a shiver and before the girls could ask who they saw his twitching rabbit ears and figured that maybe asking who was going a bit too far. Naruto turned to Yang with a grin of his own. How about you Yang? Naruto asked and she grinned and pounded a fist to her chest proudly. Never been kissed before in my life. Yang said proudly, and for some reason she could see that nobody believed her on that. She was still grinning though, even when she sat back down. Naruto shook his head before his eyes narrowed. He wondered why Osborn wanted to see Ruby and John. Does anyone else has a bad feeling about Ruby and John being called to Osborn office? Asked Gaara, but nobody answer him because they all have the same feeling. It turns out that the bad feeling that everyone have was that Team RWBY was going to be sent to a mission, something that everybody didn't agree and say they weren't ready for it. They were now also joined by Vanilla Scarlatina, Himawari's friend, and her mother as the experts on Frontis biology and history. They both were rabbit Frontis that look a lot alike, except for their hair color. Honey have short straight hair and a golden brown tone almost as Honey, that was why she got her name, while Vanilla have light blonde long hair that was a little bit spike at the end. Honey was the wife of a previous Naruto Toad Frontis reincarnation, and Vanilla was their daughter. That Naruto reincarnation have been one of the strongest reincarnations so far, and have also awakened all his past memories. Unfortunately they have lived in a turbulent time, where Frontis were treated as little more than intelligent animals, so he organized a revolution to get the Frontis the respect and freedom that they deserve. But he never got to see his dreams come true when he died protecting Honey when she was giving birth to their daughter. But it was this sad story that made Naruto's family get along with them so well. In fact, Himawari and Vanilla had become not only best friends but also sisters and have spent a lot of time talking about their father and families. Right now they all were seeing Team RWBY were in a forest tracking a new kind of Grim. I wonder what could have done this? Yang asked with a whistle as she and the rest of Team RWBY looked at the destroyed forest around them. Obson had decided to send Ruby and her team out to investigate the appearance of a new breed of Grim. There were huge slash marks in the ground and craters covering the place. What kind of creature are they tracking? And why did they were sent alone? Asked an alarmed Kushina. It is human-sized. Blake said as she looked at the tracks around the ground and saw that there were both hand prints with claws and paw prints for feet. On each side of the print were secondary prints with a bone-like appearance to them. The tracks went into the nearby lake and she could see that the water near the lake looked tinted. What kind of creature is this? Or could it be a scam and those marks were made by a person? Asked now Minato. That is highly unlikely, Minato-san. Faking a Grim attack would only attract the attention of hunters and huntress that would put an end to whatever they were planning. Answer Honey, who have studied vastly the Hunters organization and how they react to the enemy when her Naruto was leading the Frontis revolution. These are oversized fox tracks, a relative of yours. Weiss commented before she asked the second part to Naruto with a slight superior tone to her voice. Naruto's eye twitched slightly before he pointed at some shoe prints. Hey, some human prints. You related somehow? Naruto asked sarcastically and she shut up when she thought about how rude she must have been. He had been nothing but nice and helpful to them when he could be, and here she was snaking at him. He really hadn't done anything to deserve the treatment he had been getting, and even when people tried to pick on him, he just ignored it and continued to smile and laugh with them. So we have a big fox covered in bones, with people hands? Ruby asked as she imagined a cute fluffy fox holding onto a baby bottle while giving them a cute look. When Ruby said that description, Tsunade recognized it from some reports she have read when she was Hokage. She turned to ask Jiraiya, but seeing that he was pale almost confirmed her fears. Despite this she still asked him. Jiraiya, those that description sounds like. But Tsunade never got to finish that sentence when Jiraiya answered. Yes it does, it is too similar to Naruto's transformation when he used too much of the Kyuubi's chakra and he couldn't control it. What? Everyone else exclaimed. I mean that the description that Ruby said matches with the form that Naruto took in his fight against Pain just after he had stabbed Hinata. Answered Tsunade. Which is a matter of great concern because that form is something that Naruto only used to turn before he befriended Kurama, and even then he only transformed when he was really angry at someone. Compliment Jiraiya. It's more concerning the fact that Kurama has been confused with a Grim. Is he the creature they are tracking, the real Kurama, or just a Grim creature that seems like him? And what happened to Kurama to look like a Grim, or what happened to this Grim to seem like Kurama? Said Gaara, making everyone dread even more how the incoming confrontation would proceed. Naruto on the other hand looked at the slightly melted scratch marks on the ground. He knew what made these marks, but he couldn't really remember. It was like the memory was there, but hard to reach. Yang seemed to notice his look and got down next to him and looked over his shoulder to look at the marks. What can you smell? Yang asked, and Naruto winced. Blood. This thing's scent is so covered in blood I can't get a match or track it. The whole area is reeking of the scent. Naruto admitted out loud, and Blake herself was mentally groaning from the repulsive scent coating the land. To think that they had accepted this mission without really thinking about if they were suited for it. She and Naruto were the only ones that had any real tracking abilities or experience. This is seeming more grave by the minute. I really hope that we are just worrying for nothing. said Kushina, and she was hugged by Minato, who tried to comfort her. "I don't smell anything," RWBY said with a slight unconcerned tone to her voice, and Naruto frowned for a moment when he looked at the marks on the ground again. He went over to the handprints next to RWBY before he placed his own hand in them and found that they were a perfect fit. RWBY noticed and tilted her head in confusion. "Okay, so maybe this is a faunus we are dealing with," RWBY said lightly, and Blake was about to defend the faunus before Naruto interrupted her. "That might actually be a possibility right now, but that doesn't explain to bone prints," Naruto said with a frown, and he knew that he had seen these marks somewhere before. He trailed the prints into the water, but he also noticed something the others missed. The bones prints vanish halfway to the water, leaving on just normal tracks. Naruto pointed out, and Blake went to his side to confirm what he said. "This is looking more like Naruto's Kyuubi transformation," said Tsunade, knowing how Naruto's transformation work. "The bright side is that the creature responsible seemed to power down if the bones disappear," added Jiraiya. "So it may or may not be a faunus with some kind of strange semblance. The creature is fox-like, can create some kind of bone armor, smells like blood, and it really powerful if the craters and slashes in the ground mean anything," Y said as she put everything together and still couldn't come up with anything that may help them past that. Weiss was knocked out of her thought when she was pushed to the ground by Yang, while RWBY was pushed down by Blake. Naruto ducked as a red beam of aura shot out of the water, and if it hadn't been for Yang and Blake, both Weiss and RWBY would have been beheaded by the beam of energy. "What was that?" Everyone shouted, really worried for Naruto's security. The beam stopped and they all quickly stood up and looked at the water. Water exploded as a red orb shot out of the water before splitting into dozens of red orbs. RWBY used her speed and grabbed Blake just in time when the red orbs exploded on the ground where she was. Yang punched the ground and the recoil from her own attack sent her into the air long enough for the orbs to pass under her and explode. The black glyph appeared next to Weiss and she jumped on it and used it to propel herself away from the explosive orbs. "I think we found our culprit," Yang shouted over the sound of rocks shattered and hitting the ground, and then other girls looked at the water. They quickly regrouped right next to Naruto. His eyes wide and face written in horror. Slowly a red figure came out of the water and Blake gasped when she saw blood-red rabbit ears come from the water first. "I was wondering why I only had one tail," Naruto thought in shock when deep blood-colored spiky hair started to come out of the water and Weiss noticed that the hair was the same shape as Naruto's like the ears were. The figure continued to walk out of the water and then its face and shoulders could be seen. Its full body was just that single color and it was looking Naruto right in the face. "Oh no. It really is Kurama," shout Hinata and Hishina, only to be corrected by Jiraiya. "That is not the Kurama that we know, he look almost as Naruto looked when he tried to use his chakra." "But what does this means, Jiraiya-sensei?" asked Minato. "I don't know, what do you think, Gaara? After all you were a Jinchuriki too," said Jiraiya. "I'm not sure, Jiraiya-sama, I always wonder what happened to the Bijus after chakra disappear from the world, but what I can tell you is that I'm almost certain that he really is Kurama, I can feel it." This make everyone get conflicted emotions. They were glad to see Naruto's old companion alive, but they were worried why he was looking like that and what he was going to do. "That looks a lot like you too, Foxy," Yang said when they saw the long single fox tail coming from the base of this thing's spine. She looked at Naruto when she didn't get an answer and she finally saw the horror on his face. Okay, now even she was worried. If something was enough to put a scare face in Naruto of all people, then she had a good reason to be afraid. "RWBY. Get everyone out of here," Naruto said as he crouched down on all fours at the same time as the one-tailed creature in front of him. RWBY looked at him like he was insane before she noticed that Blake looked like she wanted to run away. The amount of blood this thing reached of was enough to make her gag, and the utter despair it radiated made her feel like the situation was hopeless. "No. We fight together," RWBY shouted to him as she pulled out her weapon in its sniper form before switching it to scythe mode and pointing it at the creature that seemed to be just happy with ignoring them and just staring at Naruto, waiting for him to look away just once before pouncing. "What the hell do you think you're doing, girl? Do as Naruto tells you and run away," shout Tsunade, completely upset that RWBY didn't do as Naruto told her. Everyone else agreed with her but were also impressed loyalty and valor of no abandoning her teammates no matter what, but it could also be the fact that RWBY didn't knew how strong Kurama really was. "RWBY. I am not asking you. This thing is too dangerous for you guys to handle. It might be too dangerous for me to handle right now," Naruto yelled without looking at her, but she stayed firm on her stance. She did take a moment to think over his words and in this moment the other girls got ready to fight. "I am all for running away, but if it is as strong as you say, even if we run it will only catch us after you die," Weiss admitted, and Naruto grimaced when he realized them all fighting together really was the only option. If they ran they would be killed, but here at least he could somewhat keep it focused on him. He was thankful that it only had a single tail, because if it was his four-tailed state he would be freaking out. With his current power limit decreased as much as it was, he would have some real trouble. "Don't fight him, Naruto-kun-san. Just run away if you can't beat him," shouted an equally worried Hinata, Himawari and Kushina. "Sorry Foxy, but you aren't fighting alone," Yang said as she punched the air in front of her and sent a shot at the creature in front of them. She blinked though when it didn't even try to dodge, and instead of her attack killing it, it ended up doing nothing to even cause the smallest amount of damage. Blake felt a small tremor in the ground before she pulled Yang out of the way, just as a red claw shot out of the ground and impaled the air where she was. "Don't touch my sister," Ruby yelled and she started firing rounds of her weapon at the creature, but it was unaffected by them as it pulled its hand from the ground. Ice covered the creature when Y stabbed her rapier into the ground and they were about to cheer before the ice shattered and the creature turned its head to Weiss and growled. Its round wide eyes narrowed into ovals and its sharp teeth showed its glowing white mouth. They were all blasted back when it roared at them and they skid across the ground in different directions. "Damn Naruto, run away and take those girls with you. You can't face Kurama even with your ridiculous strength. Run and save your life," said a desperate Jiraiya that was remembering his encounter with a Kyuubi-powered Naruto and how he barely survived it. "Damn," Naruto thought as he corrected himself as pointed his tail and sent a barrage of needles at the creature. He blinked when the creature's face became panicked for a second before it ran around the needles and went straight for Naruto. It stood up straight and Naruto copied its movements and in unison they both sent bone-shattering punches at each other's face. Crack. "Hinata, tell me, how do you know that Grim and why does it resemblance Naruto?" demand Honey. "We believe that that creature is Kurama, also known as the Kyuubi, who was sealed inside Naruto since he was born. He is a sentient mass of chakra that once was a part of the JWBY." Answer. Hinata and Honey and Vanilla immediately knew the trouble that Naruto and the girls were in, after all they have here all about Naruto's original life. The sound of their thunderous attacks boomed and Naruto's burnt face quickly healed. The creature's face deformed before reforming just as quickly as Naruto healed. Naruto heard the sound of Blake sending a round of bullets at the creature, even though it wasn't effective. Both Naruto and his dark copy pulled their arms back before it punched him in the chest and he got it in the neck. The wave of air pressure from their hits blew back his hair and the girls, now standing up, saw the ground cracking around them. The burn on his chest healed, but the claw mark stayed for a while longer before healing. The creature quickly healed and they both placed their hands together before smashing them into the other's ribs in sync. No one in the room say anything more, they were all worried for Naruto, but no one could look away from the fight in the screen. Crack. Naruto grunted in pain and the creature's body bulged on its other side before they both healed from the attack. He jerked his head forward and he gave the creature a headbutt. He knocked the creature back and in that split second he noticed something. This thing isn't made of chakra. It is made of aura. Naruto thought in shock before he was winded by a punch to the neck and sent flying from the hit that he just suffered in his shock. The aura creature rushed him and he waved his tail and sent a needle at the creature. It wasn't able to dodge before it was pierced by the needle. "Now," Ruby shouted as she pointed her weapon at the point his needle struck and she blew a hole in the creature's chest. "That's it. Naruto can hurt him with his tail needles," shouted Konohamaru. "But if that creature is made of aura instead of chakra, then it shouldn't be Kurama or even look as him," stated Minato, making everyone wonder that themselves. It was Gaara that said what everyone was fearing to hear. No, it would be too much coincidence that a Grim would evolve to look as Kurama, but what happened to him that now he is made of aura instead of chakra? "Not so tough now, are you?" Yang started yelling before the creature bulged again and its chest hole filled up with red energy before becoming a deep blood color again. The blood drained from her face before her gray eyes turned red and she ran next to Naruto and rushed the monster with them. "I go high, you go low," she yelled and with a nod Naruto ran in front of her and parried a blow for the monster before punching it in the chin with boulder-smashing force. It was sent up into the air and Yang used his shoulder to boost herself into the air. Yang saw Naruto send a few more needles at the creature and when they hit she picked her targets and she sent an explosive punch that blew their creature's head off its body and put several more holes in it. It quickly filled again before it seen a creepy grin at her and charged up a red orb in its mouth. Her face was bathed in a red glow and just as the creature fired the orbiter, she felt Naruto's fur wire wrap around her body and pull her out of the way. She ended up landing in his arms and the fur wire unwrapped from her and went back into his tail. He glared up at the monster in front of them and Yang blushed lightly at her hero before getting out of his arms and standing on her own. Hinata's anger was about to resurface again when she saw that scene, but it was quickly extinguished with the worried thoughts of Naruto. "I was right, my needles weakened the area around where they hit," Naruto commented lowly to himself as he pulled his weapon out and twisted it until he was its full 7 feet. The monster landed on the ground and when it did it extended its claw and the hand grew until it was the size of a bus. Naruto and Yang ran out of the way as it crushed where they were standing. What the hell is going on? Why is Kurama trying to kill my son, doesn't the damn fox recognize him? Shouted desperate Kushina that was at the verge of crying as well as all the women in the room. Higher needles added. Weiss yelled as she jumped into the air and prepared to stab the hand. Naruto nodded and sent some needles into the creature's hand just as Weiss stabbed it and froze the hand and the arm leading to the main body. She pointed her hand at the main body and under it a blue glish appeared. The creature broke the ice, but its eyes glared at Weiss when it noticed it couldn't move from that spot. It growled and the glyph under it vanished when it was destroyed. Blake ran at the monster and just when it noticed her a second Blake formed instantly right next to her and they both slashed at the creature. It punched Blake right in the face before the Blake it punched faded away into a shadow. Picking up a needle next to the ground, another copy of Blake formed next to her. She stabbed the creature with the needle while it was confused and her Kobe stabbed right next to the needle before vanishing. Blake formed another clone and before the creature could finish healing, they both stabbed it again and the blade copy turned into shadow and vanished again. Blake formed another copy of herself right in front of her just as the creature punched at her and in the split second before the clone faded away, she was able to duck under the blow and stab the creature again. He was blown off her feet though when it roared at her and she winced in pain when she felt her back slam into the hard ground. The creature pounced into the air and was about to land on her before it was knocked out of the air by RWBY shooting it. The bullet didn't do any damage, but the force behind the shot itself knocked it away long enough to give Blake time to get up and run back to the group. They are fighting really well as a team, maybe they will be okay after all. Said Konohamaru with hope, and while the younger ones believed that, or at least wanted to believe it, the older ones were less optimistic since they knew firsthand the power that the Kyuubi have. Cool ability. Yang said when Blake got next to them. My semblance is shadow, but the clones don't last too long and aren't very durable. They can't go very far from me either. Blake answered when she saw the look she was getting, before they all felt their air shaking around them when blue and red orbs filled the air around them. They looked to see the creature's tail pointing in front of its mouth and the orb shot in front of it and turned into a dark purplish black orb. The orb then became tiny and the ground became a crater under it before it gnashed again the teeth of the creature as it ate the orb. Run away Naruto. Shouted Minato who have seen Kurama do the same thing the day Naruto was born. It ate it. RWBY said in confusion before they all jumped in shock when the creature whole body bloated to unreal levels. I don't think it can move like that. Weiss reasoned before steam came out of the creature's mouth. Then it shot the small ball out of its mouth and the girls were blinded by the bright light for a moment. Naruto jumped in front of the girls and in a second he quickly formed a Rasengan in his hand. Holding it in front of him the attack collided before the girls were blown on their butts and explosion right in front of them. Naruto was shot out of the smoke before he rolled on the ground in front of them. Naruto. RWBY shouted as she got on her butt and ran to him and the others went after her and they gasped when they saw the condition he was in. Most of his skin was burned off and he was bleeding quickly. His healing factor wasn't helping him as much as it should and he was knocked out. Yang and Blake stood in front of her and Weiss as they tried to wake up Naruto. They stared at the creature but it only turned around and started walking back to the water again. It turned its head one last time and looked at Naruto being carried away in a hurry before it fully sank beneath the waves. Naruto wasn't ready to defeat it just yet. You idiot. Why did you do that? Shout Hinata and Honey at the same time while crying when they saw Naruto's condition. Their respective daughter went to comfort each of them telling them that it was in their father's nature to protect the people even at cost of his well-being and that was something that they love about him. The rest of the room kept quiet looking worried as the girls took the injured Naruto away, but some of them were also wondering how Kurama become a Grim and if this was the reason why Naruto have reincarnate this time. What if RWBY reading? Naruto the Huntsman end here and thanks for watching my video till the end.